Chapter 1201. On the moon. The palace is still quiet, and time seems to have stopped here. Suddenly, Otsutsuki Sarai, who was lying on the bed, sat up abruptly, and then tilted his head slightly, as if he was observing something, but the cloth covering his eyes shows that he can't see anything yet. What happened? After a while, Otsutsuki Sarai murmured in a low voice. Just now, he suddenly felt a palpitation, and this feeling came from the Tenseigan in his eye sockets. It seems that something suddenly stimulated his Tenseigan that has not yet been fully developed. At the same time, he also found that the giant Tenseigan enshrined in the lookout was also inexplicably agitated just now. It's him. Subconsciously, the figure of Nagato flashed in Otsutsuki Samurai's mind. In his opinion, only the other party who has also mastered the giant Tenseigan can affect his undeveloped Tenseigan and the giant Tenseigan that has been sealed in the lookout. But soon, he was puzzled again, because according to the records of the clan, the giant Tenseigan of the Hyuga clan in the shinobi world is not large. It is far less than the giant Tenseigan in the lookout that has almost integrated all of the Otsutsuki clan on the moon. So, he doesn't understand what the other party did to cross such a long distance, penetrate the layers of enchantments and seals, and affect him and the giant Tenseigan in the lookout. This is simply impossible, unless the level of his Tenseigan has surpassed my Tenseigan and the giant Tenseigan enshrined in the lookout. Otsutsuki Samurai immediately dispelled this conjecture. His Tenseigan is still in the process of being developed, and it is normal for it to be affected by a stronger Tenseigan, but the giant Tenseigan enshrined in the lookout is the treasure of their Otsutsuki clan. He doesn't believe that the giant Tenseigan of the Hyuga clan in the shinobi world can surpass the giant Tenseigan of the Otsutsuki clan. After carefully sensing for a while, he found that the abnormality just now had disappeared completely, and he breathed a sigh of relief. Sure enough, it was just an accident. How could there be another Tenseigan stronger than the giant Tenseigan enshrined in the lookout? Immediately, he lay back in relief in a cave in the shinobi world. Zetsu looked at Obsidian, who had a Rinnegan transplanted in front of him, and asked, "Still can't adapt?" The masked man nodded and said with an embarrassed expression, "Yes, it's more difficult to control the Rinnegan than I thought." Zetsu smiled and said, "Of course, otherwise Madara wouldn't have chosen Nagato specifically. The risk of entrusting the Rinnegan to a strange child in a time of war can be imagined. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't find a more suitable candidate, Madara obviously wouldn't take this risk. As it turned out, Madara's decision was stupid. The physique of the Uzumaki Nagato could barely control the Rinnegan, but without the shackles of emotion, it was impossible for the adult Nagato to sacrifice his own life to perform the rebirth technique to resurrect Madara. So from the moment he sent out the Rinnegan, Madara had actually lost control of his Rinnegan. When Zetsu mentioned Nagato, Obsidian asked, "Is there any news about Nagato?" Zetsu shook his head. "He should know that we are looking for him. He has hidden." Really, Obsidian didn't care too much. At this time, even if he found Nagato, he couldn't deal with Nagato. Once he adapts to the transplanted Rinnegan and gains the ability to control the demon statue, he can become Jubi's Jinchuriki. At that time, Nagato, who has lost the Rinnegan, will not be a threat to him at all. After a moment, Obsidian asked, "Is there any movement from Amitsukami during this time?" Zetsu said, "I heard that Homusubi of Amitsukami appeared in my village some time ago, and then there was no news. I suspect that Amitsukami and the 5 great ninja villages have reached an agreement." Obsidian's face sank. "Let them be. I will give them a surprise." On the altar, plop, when Hyojin fell for the second time, Xiang Lin, who was guarding by the side, suddenly felt as if her heart was grasped by something, suddenly tightening, and her whole person was lost for a moment. But soon, she came back to her senses and rushed to the altar. "My lord!" Looking at Hyojin lying on the ground in a bloody mess, with no breath and chakra fluctuations, Xiang Lin's tone of voice unconsciously became sobbing. Although she had been prepared for Hyojin's death, when it really happened, she still panicked and was at a loss. Roar. At this moment, a roar came from the altar. Xiang Lin turned her head and was shocked to find that with Hyojin's death, the dragon's vein, which had been unsealed and was no longer bound by the contract, rushed out of the gourd magical artifact, carrying boundless power and majestic chakra, and hovered over the altar. For a moment, the wind and clouds in the barrier changed, as if the end of the world had arrived. Not caring about the dragon's vein that had escaped, Xiang Lin quickly waved her hand and activated the 10,000 nature attraction at the sacrificial offering that Hyojin had prepared in the distance, sucking it to her side along with the portable storage compartment that contained the offering. Then, with trembling hands, she dipped a little of Hyojin's blood on the altar and began to form a seal. Finally, she mustered all her strength and shouted, "Impure Earth Reincarnation Technique." Ah! In an instant, an empty scream came from the sacrificial offering's mouth. At the same time, countless talismans crossed the space and attached themselves to the sacrificial offering's body, and the soulless sacrificial offering also came to life at this moment, waving its hands wildly, as if it was trying its best to climb and break free. Xiang Lin was shocked to see this. At this moment, the sacrificial offering's dull face gradually recovered, and its waving hands stopped. After being stunned for a while, it said in an extremely awkward tone, "How magical." Xiang Lin asked carefully, "Sirs, is it you?" The sacrificial offering glanced at Xiang Lin and said regretfully, "If only you had cast the technique a little later. I almost saw the Mitsukawa. It's really you." Xiang Lin heaved a long sigh of relief. Obviously, Hyojin had been successfully impure Earth reincarnation by Xiang Lin. As for Hyojin, who had the impure Earth body, he noticed the dragon's vein that was hovering in the air and curled his lips. "I really forgot about you." After saying that, Hyojin shouted at the dragon's vein in the air, "Are you going back on your own, or do you want me to push you back?" When the dragon's vein, which had just been playing around, heard Hyojin's shout, its body froze. Then it obediently retracted its chakra and retreated into the gourd magical artifact that was left at the side. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 1202. As the dragon vein re-entered the gourd magic tool, the enchantment suddenly returned to calm. The changes in the wind and clouds and the doomsday scene just now seemed to be just an illusion. Xiang Lin's restless heart was finally at ease. The previous collapse of heaven and earth, the previous confusion and helplessness, all quickly calmed down because of Kuroto's return. For her, as long as Kuroto is still here, nothing is a problem. Hyojin walked to the gourd magic tool at this time, picking up the gourd magic tool on the ground and restoring the seal on the gourd magic tool. This time his death also lifted the contract relationship between him and the dragon vein. So from the moment of his death, he is no longer the dragon vein's human pillar. Fortunately, he got along with the dragon vein quite well, so the dragon vein did not go berserk after escaping. Otherwise, Xiang Lin may not be able to clean up this mess alone. Tying the gourd magic tool to his waist, Hyojin was not in a hurry to deal with the dragon vein. Restoring the contractual relationship with the dragon vein is something he can do at any time, but with his strength, signing a contract or not doesn't mean much. Because even without a contract, he can still use the dragon vein's chakra at will. What really limits him from using the dragon vein's chakra is not the contract or other external factors, but the high concentration of natural energy contained in the dragon vein's chakra. From the dragon vein that just escaped, he can clearly see that the dragon vein still has a huge chakra, which shows that his previous use of the dragon vein's chakra in the ceremony was a failure, and the dragon vein still has a lot of room for excavation. Then, Hyojin came to his body. Tisk, it's really tragic. Looking at his bloody and unrecognizable body lying on the ground, even if he exists in the form of an impure earth body, Hyojin couldn't help but tremble. Then he opened the Tenseigan and observed the body. That's right, although he took off his Tenseigan and put it in a small storage container before he died, but just like Nagato, who was reborn by the Edo Tenseigan in the original space-time, His Edo body still has a pair of Tenseigan between real and illusory. After carefully examining the Yin body, Hyojin shook his head and muttered, "The heart has been completely crushed, and the body also has traces of disintegration. This should be the price of opening the death gate, and the backlash of forcefully interrupting the ritual. Sigh, the damage is more serious than I thought." While assessing the damage of the Yin body, he put the bloody Yin body into the portable storage that he used to store the offerings. He had expected that death would bring serious damage to his body, but to this extent, it was still somewhat out of his expectations. And the main reason for this is that he underestimated the destructive power of Ghost Sprout on the flesh and blood. Although he successfully killed Ghost Sprout in the ritual, Ghost Sprout still made his body a mess. So much so that even with his current technology, he has a headache on how to repair the bloody Yin body in front of him. At this time, Xianglin used Wanxiang Tenseigan to move the other 6 portable storage containers to the altar, and then said to Hyojin, "Sama, I have placed your clones in here." "Okay." Hyojin nodded slightly and glanced at the 6 portable storage containers with the Tenseigan. Similar to the Yin body, these 6 clones have also suffered serious damage. This is mainly because the damage to the clone is too serious after the perfect fusion. In contrast, the low temperature of the ice release ninjutsu doesn't cause as much damage to the clone as expected. The portable storage containers have a cycle maintenance system specially designed by Hyojin, which can repair the body autonomously. So after Xianglin quickly put them into the portable storage containers, the deterioration of the injuries of these clones has also been effectively alleviated. "I don't know how much it will cost to fully recover." With his hand on his forehead, Hyojin sighed. In order to perfectly repair the Yin body and these high-strength clones, it is bound to use a lot of expensive herbs to prepare the nutrient solution. So there is no need to think about it to know that this will be a very huge expense. Especially his Yin body, after all, is a powerful body that once reached the 6-path level, plus the degree of damage is more serious than the other 6 clones, so it will be more difficult to recover, and at that time, he may even need to use some new equipment. Temporarily putting these worries aside, Hyojin squatted in front of the small storage container containing his pair of Tenseigan and carefully observed the Tenseigan floating in the nutrient solution. At a certain moment in the 3rd stage of the ritual, he could clearly feel that his Tenseigan had changed. It's just that because the time was very short, he didn't have time to carefully feel this change, so he couldn't confirm what exactly happened. But one thing is certain, his Tenseigan has gained a lot of benefits in the ritual, and it has improved to a higher level. Although he later forcibly interrupted the ritual, causing this improvement to fall slightly, he is still very sure that his Tenseigan is no longer the Tenseigan before the ritual. "After my body expelled the 6 clones, it really completely fell from the 6-path level, but this pair of Tenseigan may still retain the level of 6-path. It belongs to the eyes that have truly entered the 6-path level. Unlike the body, the improvement of the pupil power mainly depends on the strength of the chakra. At the level of 6-path realm, the strength of the pupillary power mainly depends on the strength of the yin-yang fusion technique. Therefore, it is normal for Suijin's body to fall after losing the 6 clones, but the strength of the Tenseigan will not necessarily fall completely. This is a pleasant surprise. After realizing this, Hyojin found that this is very helpful for his next ritual, because a pair of real 6-path Tenseigan can not only help him accelerate the fusion of yin and yang, 5 elements and 7 attributes of chakra, but also help him better suppress the Ghost Sprout, allowing him to completely control the process of the ritual. Thinking of this, Hyojin carefully put away the small storage jar containing his Tenseigan. What about the body, in fact, can be done slowly. Even if it is completely destroyed, it can be recultivated through cloning and redevelopment. But if this pair of Tenseigan is destroyed or lost, then all his efforts will be in vain. Seeing that Hyojin has dealt with the 7 bodies including the corpse and the Tenseigan, Xianglin quickly asked, "My lord, what should we do next?" After looking around, Hyojin ordered, "Call back Aero and the instructor, and then dismantle everything that can be dismantled here for me and bring it back." The 2nd chapter is here. I'm still writing. There will be a 3rd chapter in the evening. asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 1203. After a while, Xiang Lin summoned Gara and the 3 generations Kazakage puppets who were patrolling the outer perimeter. After that, they began to dismantle the barrier. After all, many of the materials used to set up the barrier could be reused. After dismantling these materials, they could be reused during the next ritual, which could save Hyojin a lot of money. Hyojin himself did not participate in the dismantling work. Instead, he stood quietly on the altar, his eyes constantly scanning the surroundings. Through the test of this ritual, he found that the layout of his ritual was quite reasonable. There were no mistakes in the first and second stages. However, there was a slight accident in the third stage. He had obviously underestimated the power of opening the gate of death. His altar wasn't sturdy enough, so when he opened the gate of death in the third stage, the center of the altar instantly collapsed. The entire altar was full of cracks and was on the verge of collapsing. Because Hyojin forcibly stopped the ritual in the third stage, the destruction of the altar did not affect him at all. However, it was conceivable that if he could enter the fourth stage and attack the Kekiai net, the damage to the altar would have a huge impact on his ritual. This point could not be ignored. Otherwise, his next ritual would probably fail because of this seemingly insignificant detail. I can't choose the location of the ritual again in this kind of place, then, Hyojin whispered. For the sake of safety and concealment, Hyojin chose the location of the ritual in the vast sea of sand. However, after this attempt, he suddenly realized that his choice of ritual location was not even as good as Hiriko, who was the first to carry out the ritual. Hiriko realized that his chakra was not enough, so he chose the location of the ritual at the top of the mountain, and he even specially chose a day when the heaven and earth phenomenon would appear. Even Hiriko knows how to use the power of nature, and I actually neglected this point. Sure enough, arrogance makes people stupid. Looking down on the losers like Hiriko and Danzo made Hyojin unknowingly become arrogant. He thought that he had prepared enough, but reality taught him a good lesson. Now it seemed that the chakra he had prepared could only support him to complete the first 3 stages of the ritual. As for the 4th stage of the blood-seizing net, the consumption was likely to be more than 10 times that of the previous 3 stages. In other words, the chakra Hyojin prepared for this ritual was only 1/10 of what the ritual actually needed. This was no longer a matter of insufficient preparation. This was simply a catastrophic mistake. While Hyojin was silently reflecting on the various mistakes he had made during the ceremony, Xiang Lin, Gara, and the others had completely dismantled the 2 layers of barriers and returned to the altar area. Against the sandstorm, Xiang Lin asked loudly, "My lord, do we need to dismantle the altar?" Due to the absence of the barrier, the previously peaceful altar area was instantly engulfed by the sandstorm and returned to the dark and gloomy environment of the desert. "Forget it. Let's return to the Sky Fortress." Hyojin shook his head. This time, the altar did not meet the standards. Coupled with the serious damage, there was no value in dismantling and reusing it. As for destroying the traces of the ritual, in fact, there was no need for them to do anything. Without the barrier, everything here would be buried by the sandstorm in less than half an hour. Even if Hyojin wanted to find this place again, it would not be easy. Afterward, Hyojin launched the Rainwheel Pull, carrying the 7 portable storage cabins, and returned to the Sky Fortress in the sky. Xiang Lin, who had the Rinnegan, Gara, who could control sand, and the 3 generations of Kazakage puppets who had mastered the magnetic release also flew up and followed behind Hyojin back to the Sky Fortress. After returning to the Sky Fortress, Hyojin immediately got busy. First, he took out his own body and 6 clones from the portable storage cabins one by one, then carefully treated their wounds and put them into the giant nutrition tank. The giant nutrition tank has its own repair function, which can recover at least 60% to 70% of the injuries of these bodies. As for the remaining complex and serious injuries, Hyojin decided to wait for these bodies to recover to a certain extent before dealing with them. Immediately afterward, Hyojin checked his Tenseigan through the instrument and found that the chakra fluctuations of the Tenseigan were 7 times stronger than before the ritual. and there were some subtle changes in the shape. It looked more like a crystal instead of flesh and blood. After moving the Tenseigan into the more precise thermostatic nutrition tank, Hyojin left the laboratory and came to the practice field of the Sky Fortress. He printed with both hands and whispered, "Edo Tenseigan technique, release." Hua. As the mist dissipated, he got rid of the Edo Tenseigan technique and got rid of the control of Xiang Lin, the caster, and became a free Edo body, like Madara Uchiha in the original Space and Time. Clenching his fist and feeling the changes in his body, Hyojin said, "Although the strength of the sacrifice I prepared is very high, the weakening after becoming Edo body is still very obvious." Because Hyojin is very familiar with the feeling of controlling the Yang-released doppelganger, he knows that although the strength of this sacrifice is similar to the Yang-released doppelganger, the feeling of using soul descent technique to control the Yang-released doppelganger and using Edo Tenseigan technique to enter this sacrifice are completely different. Not to mention the difference in physical functions, the stagnation between the spirit body and the sacrifice makes the strength of Edo body worse than the Yang-released doppelganger. If only considering the body, the strength of Hyojin's Edo body is only about 70% or 80% of his strength when he was controlling the Yang-released doppelganger. However, considering that this Edo body has Tenseigan and the Yang-released doppelganger only has Byakugan, so the strength of Edo body and Yang-released doppelganger are not easy to compare. Once again, Hyojin tried to enter the Tenseigan chakra mode, but the results of several attempts have failed. It seems that it is not a real Tenseigan. It is impossible to enter the Tenseigan chakra mode. Although he is a little regretful, he is not surprised by this result. The Tenseigan on his Edo body is actually simulated by the Tenseigan pupil power contained in his spirit body. It is not a real Tenseigan. He can use basic pupil techniques like rain pull freely, but the most profound pupil techniques like Tenseigan chakra mode are useless to the fake Tenseigan. At the same time, he also discovered that his free soil body was not indestructible. As a sacrifice, his body was constantly being eroded by his spirit body that had the aura of the netherworld. It could be expected that as time passed, his free soil body would naturally collapse, and the length of time it would last would depend on the strength of the sacrifice. Free Edo body really has a limit. It is not realistic to want to use this method to achieve immortality. There are only 2 days left in this month. Please support the students who still have monthly votes. In addition, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 1204. My Village. Yatongya. 2 vortexes, one on the left and one on the right, with huge air waves, attacked Shuriwe in the center of the training field. Shuriwe, with a serious face, suddenly raised his arms. Multiple shadow snake hands. Swish! In an instant, countless slender, white-scaled snakes shot out from the sleeves of Shuriwe's arms. With a whistling sound, shot toward the 2 incoming vortexes, firmly entangling Ya and Akamaru, who were spinning rapidly. Bang, bang. Then, Shuriwe suddenly swung his hand, and with 2 muffled sounds, Ya and Akamaru, who were entangled by the white-scaled snakes, were thrown out of the training field and fell to the ground. Even Ya was defeated? Ino, who was watching the battle on the side, was shocked. Counting Ding Ci and Sakai, who had lost before, 3 people in the same batch had been defeated by Shuriwe. Sakura smiled proudly. You didn't expect it, did you? Although Shuriwe looks stupid, his strength is extraordinary. At first, when Shuriwe parachuted into their team, Sakura was very nervous, thinking that Shuriwe was replacing her. After all, the general team had 3 people. Later, she learned that Shuriwe was not replacing her, but, joining, she was distressed that her team's status was going to -1 again. But after getting familiar with him, she found that although Shuriwe was very strong, he was unexpectedly easy to get along with, and her team's status inexplicably increased by +1. On the other side, Naruto said to Shikamaru, "How about it? I didn't lie to you. I said Shuriwe was very strong. If you still don't believe it, you can go up and see for yourself." Shikamaru shook his head. No need, I'm not his opponent. Before this, he still had the idea of getting revenge for Ding Ci, but just seeing it was defeated so easily, he has completely dispelled this troublesome idea. He is now very sure that the strength of this newcomer named Shuriwe is definitely at the level of a superior ninja. Among the students in the same batch, only Naruto, Sasuke, Ningxi, and Xiaoli could match him. If he racked his brains, he should be able to entangle him for a while, but the final chance of winning was still not high. At this time, Shino raised his hand and caught a flying parasite in the air, whispering, "It's strange." Hinata asked, "What's strange?" Naruto and Shikamaru also looked over. Shino usually didn't talk much, and his presence was almost non-existent, so they were curious about what Shino had discovered. Shino moved his palm in front of them. "My parasite is a little afraid of Shuriwe." Shikamaru frowned. "Has this happened before?" Shino gently nodded. When the Nine-Tails chakra in Naruto's body leaked, and when Sasuke awakened the Manjiki Sharingan, this happened. Shikamaru's expression suddenly became solemn. Sometimes insects are more sensitive than humans. Parasite insects are afraid of Naruto, Sasuke, and Shuriwe's chakra, which means that either Shuriwe's chakra is very special, or Shuriwe's strength is close to Naruto and Sasuke. Either way, it shows that this Shuriwe is not as simple as he seems. Shikamaru secretly sighed. It seems that this Shuriwe's life is not just an ordinary wandering ninja, as the village said. Just then, there was a commotion on the sidelines of the practice field. Several people looked in the direction of the sound, and found that it turned out to be Choji and Sakai, who were defeated by Shuriwe before. They called over Ningxi, Xiaoli, and Tian. Shikamaru grinned. "There's a good show to watch." Coming to the sidelines and looking at Tooth's bruised face, Ningxi was a little surprised. "You also lost?" He lowered his head and nodded dejectedly. Not only did he lose, he lost completely. Ningxi looked at Shuriwe in the field, and his expression became serious. He had actually heard that a new member named Shuriwe had joined the Naruto squad, but these days he has been immersed in training, hoping to catch up with Naruto and Sasuke, so he didn't pay too much attention to this. Xiaoli was a little eager to try. He is now at the age of vigorous energy, and it is a good thing for him to meet a good opponent. So he jumped directly to the practice field, and while coming forward to introduce himself, he stretched out his hand and made a sign of opposition. "Hello, my name is Li Locke. You can call me Xiaoli. I want to challenge you." Shuriwe also made a sign of opposition. "Hello, my name is Shuriwe." Brush. As soon as the voice fell, the two people who completed the sign of opposition launched an attack at the same time. Seeing Xiaoli on the field, Ningxi retreated to the side with his hands crossed over his chest and quietly watched the battle. As a disciple of Naruto and a member of the Hyuga clan of the My Clan, some of the necessary restraint must be maintained. Ino and Sakura took the opportunity to approach Sasuke, who was leaning alone against a big tree, and asked, "Sasuke, who do you think is stronger between Xiaoli and Shuriwe?" Ningxi also pricked up his ears, wanted to hear Sasuke's evaluation. "Humph!" Sasuke snorted and said lightly, "Except for me and Naruto, no one in the same batch can be Shuriwe's opponent." "What?" Ino was shocked. Sakura was also surprised. She knew Shuriwe was strong, but she didn't expect it to be this strong. In the same batch, only Sasuke and Naruto have a chance of winning. Ningxi frowned when he heard that. Sasuke's evaluation was very harsh to him. He didn't even make a move, but Sasuke seemed to have determined that he was no match for Shuriwe, which made him feel very uncomfortable. But he knew that Sasuke's evaluation was not without basis, so he immediately activated Supercilious Eyes and watched the battle between Xiaoli and Shuriwe more seriously. The battle was very fierce. Xiaoli's physical skills were as fierce and fast as ever, and Shuriwe's physical skills were not inferior. However, Shuriwe also had a soft body secret art. His body could twist like a snake, and his arms could extend and contract like rubber. It was very effective against Xiaoli's open style. So as time went on, Xiaoli was gradually suppressed by Shuriwe and finally lost to Shuriwe. Ino sighed. Xiaoli really lost. Sasuke's mouth twitched, and he said in his heart, "Of course, this is a guy worthy of Master's secret surveillance mission. Except for me and Naruto, the others are not at the same level as him." Ningxi also sighed for Xiaoli's defeat. He clearly saw the battle just now. Shiryue's soft body secret art was too effective against Xiaoli's iron fist. Because Xiaoli was not drunk, his moves were very easy to predict, and for Shiryue, who could twist his body at will, it was too easy to dodge. But this kind of soft body secret art could not restrain his soft fist, which specialized in the human body's acupuncture points and meridians. "I can win." So, after Xiaoli and Shiryue finished the seal of reconciliation, Ningxi flashed to the field. First update, please recommend on Monday. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 12:05. Even Ningxi is on the field. On a big tree in the distance, Kurenai chuckled softly. Asma lit a cigarette for himself, took a drag, and said casually, "As a former Gemini, how can I hold back when I meet a strong opponent?" When Naruto was still at the bottom of the ranking, the Gemini of this ninja school were Sasuke and Ningxi, who were also from a rich family. At that time, they were the stars of the ninja school, admired by all the students, and in the ninja school, only they could compete with each other. It was not until Naruto's sudden rise that Ningxi's title of Gemini was replaced by Naruto. Mute asked, "Who do you think will win?" Akai quickly said, "It must be Ningxi." Asma was a little confused. "How can you be so sure? Did you teach Ningxi some strange moves again?" Guy shook his head. "That's because you haven't seen Ningxi's efforts. I used to think that Ningxi was just a genius in physical arts, but now I understand that he is also a genius who works hard. His hard work is no worse than me and Xiaoli. And he also has the Byakugan like a mirror, so I believe he will win." Kurenai said, "But the opponent is the son of Orochimaru." Although the identity of Shiryue was kept secret from the students, it was not a secret among the shinobi. All the shinobi present knew that Shiryue's true identity was the son of Orochimaru, one of the Sannin. Mute glanced at Kakashi, who had been silent, and asked, "What do you think, Kakashi?" Kakashi said seriously, "I'm afraid Ningxi can't win." In the field, learning from Xiaoli's defeat, Ningxi put more effort into his prediction. With the help of the white eye, he gave up on attacking Siyu's limbs that could twist and contract at will. Instead, he focused on attacking the meridians and acupuncture points of Siyu's chakra. This move seemed to be very effective. Under the pressure of Ningxi's soft fists, Siyu retreated step by step and was soon forced into a corner by Ningxi. "We won." Seeing this, Tian was overjoyed. Xiaoli, Ningxi, and Sa Jing, who were defeated by Siyu before, shouted excitedly when they saw that Ningxi was about to win. Shikamaru murmured, "Is it over?" Naruto said confidently, "Just wait and see. This match won't be so easy to determine." On the other side, Sasuke looked at the reaction of his fellow students and chuckled with a touch of ridicule on his face. "Hey, you guys are too naive." Sure enough, as Sasuke expected, the battle suddenly changed dramatically. Siyu, who was forced into a corner by Ningxi's soft fists, decisively gave up the physical confrontation. His hands quickly formed a seal, and immediately a dazzling lightning flashed in his palm. Lightning release, ninjutsu. Ningxi, who was preparing to give Siyu the final blow, immediately slowed down his attack. Because of the strong light of Siyu's lightning release and the violent chakra fluctuations on the lightning release suddenly filled his field of vision with the white eye, making him lose his target for a moment. And at the moment when Ningxi hesitated, Siyu activated the lightning release ninjutsu in his palm. Lightning release, snake thunder, Pucci. All of a sudden, the lightning in Siyu's hand was like a concentrated pulse, shooting towards Ningxi. Niji, who has been vigilant for a long time, leaped up and calmly avoided Siyue's lightning release ninjutsu. But before he could land on the ground, from the corner of his eyes, he saw numerous white-scaled snakes rushing towards him from all directions. This? Ningxi was shocked and subconsciously launched the absolute defense of soft fists, Revolving Sky. With the help of Revolving Sky, Ningxi blocked Siyu's attack, and his face gradually darkened as he panted lightly. Siyu didn't seem to expect his attack to be blocked, and was slightly surprised, and then immediately said, "You are very strong." In his view, Ningxi was completely different from Ding Xiai and the others. His strength was obviously a level higher, his insight was amazing, and his moves were neat, almost without flaws. Ningxi replied, "You are not weak either, but that kind of test just now, if you don't use your full strength, you have no chance of winning." Siyu nodded seriously. "Please be careful." Ningxi's eyes narrowed. "I don't need you to remind me." After saying that, he jumped up again. Whoosh! But at this moment, accompanied by an ear-piercing whistling sound, Ningxi was shocked to find that the moon in his field of vision had suddenly disappeared. What? Not only Ningxi in the field, but also Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura on the side of the field. The other students were all shocked because they found that Siyu suddenly flashed behind Ningxi, as if he had traveled through space. No, it's not a space-time ninjutsu. It's a teleportation technique. Through the airflow, sound, and other details, Shikamaru immediately judged that what Siyu used was not a space-time ninjutsu, but an extremely fast teleportation technique, almost comparable to Naruto in the Nine Tails chakra mode. "Brother Ningxi, be careful," Hinata blurted out anxiously. And looking at the light green chakra enveloping Satsuki's body, Sasuke, who had a playful look on his face, had a solemn look in his eyes. Even he didn't dare to underestimate Satsuki in this state. In the field, Ningxi's reaction was not slow. He did not need Hinata's reminder. He had already judged his situation, immediately turned around and waved his palm, trying to force Siyu behind him to retreat. Bang! But before Ningxi completely turned around, he was punched in the ribs and then flew out with a muffled sound. After falling hard on the ground, Ningxi was still a little confused. Until now, he did not fully understand what had just happened, and looked at Siyu with a surprised face. At this time, Siyu had a kind smile on her face, walking towards Ningxi while making the seal of reconciliation in her hand. Ningxi was stunned. "I lost." In the distant tree. In addition to Kakashi, the other ninjas were also quite shocked. Mute asked uncertainly, that is Sage Mode? Although Siyu's Sage Mode was relatively different for Naruto, Jiraiya, and the other Sage Mode, but the surging Sage Chakra couldn't be faked, so Mute quickly judged it. "Yes." Kakashi nodded. "No wonder you said that Ningxi can't win. It turns out that the opponent has mastered this ability." Asma scratched his head. "Are the kids nowadays so scary?" And on a big tree at the other end of the training field, a crow that no one paid attention to was quietly staring at the training field. "The second chapter is here. Continue to write. There should be one more chapter in the evening. It's the last day. Students who still have monthly votes, don't forget to vote." Chapter 1206. On the training field. Looking at the seal of reconciliation handed over by Siyu, Ningxi struggled in his heart for a while, but in the end he still reached out and handed over the same seal of reconciliation. Although he doesn't want to admit defeat so easily, Ningxi knows very well that he has indeed lost. From a moment the other party used the body flicker technique to get rid of his Byakugan Kekkei Genkai, he has already lost, and completely lost. Taking advantage of the situation, Ningxi looked at Siyu. At this time, Siyu's whole body was wrapped in a light green chakra, which looks a bit like Naruto's Nine Tails chakra mode. But unlike Naruto's, the light green chakra on Siyu's body has a snake-like shape. From the side, it looks like there are snakes in the shape of chakra wrapping around Siyu's body. Intuition tells Ningxi that these snake-shaped chakra phantoms are most likely not just for decoration. In battle, these snake-shaped chakra phantoms are probably the same as the chakra arms that stretch out of Naruto's body in the Nine Tails chakra mode. At the same time, Ningxi was also surprised to find that Siyu in this mode has a sharp horn growing on his forehead. With the completion of the seal of reconciliation, Siyu also exited the Sage mode and returned to its normal state. At this time, Sasuke, who was on the sidelines, said, "The entertainment is over. Let's go." Immediately, he left the practice field without looking back. Sakura, Naruto, and Siyu quickly followed. Ningxi also returned to the side of the field at this time. Tian greeted him. "I heard from Naruto that the newbie called Siyu has mastered a very strange sage mode. Even Naruto and Sasuke had a hard time dealing with it, so don't worry too much." Seeing that Ningxi was not in a good mood, Ino also went forward to persuade him. "Yeah, that guy's a monster. It's normal that we can't beat him." Shikamaru secretly pulled Ino away. Ino was puzzled. "Why did you pull me?" Shikamaru shook his head. "Ningxi is different from us. Don't try to persuade him. Let him be alone." After listening to Shikamaru's explanation, Ino was even more confused. "What's different?" Shikamaru did not continue to explain. He directly pulled Ino and Ningxi away. He knew very well that the children of rich families like Ningxi and Sasuke, even if they didn't say it, they actually cared very much about the reputation of their families. So for the general peers, they didn't care about being defeated once or twice. But for them, failure was not only their own face, but also the reputation of their families behind them. What's more, Ningxi was the disciple of Naruto. These multiple identities allowed him to receive extra attention and care, but at the same time, they also brought him immense pressure and invisible shackles. So for people like them, failure was a taboo that was difficult for others to understand. They didn't need comfort, let alone pity. There was no need for Shikamaru to explain these words to Ino too clearly. It wasn't something he could explain in a few words. So instead of talking nonsense, it was better to leave directly. It would save time and effort. It seemed to confirm Shikamaru's judgment. Facing the comfort of Tian, Hinata, and the others, Ningxi responded politely and said, "I'm a little tired. I'll go back first." After returning home alone, Ningxi came to his training ground and began to practice in silence. Unlike the calmness on the surface, his heart was very gloomy at this time. He didn't resent anyone, but he didn't understand why he still couldn't catch up with Naruto and Sasuke, even though he had worked so hard. Today, he was defeated by Naruto, a student from Sasuke's team. Time passed bit by bit, and the sun gradually set in the west, leaving only a trace of afterglow on the horizon. Ningxi, who had been training in the training ground for several hours, was already sweating profusely. Even so, he still had no intention of stopping. Creak. At this time, the sliding door of the training ground was pulled open and Richa walked in. Seeing this, Ningxi quickly stopped his practice and saluted Richa. "Father." Richa looked at Ningxi, who was exhausted and sighed. "I have heard about what happened during the day. Don't worry too much. The other party is not an ordinary child." Ningxi pursed his lips. "Yes." Richa stepped forward and patted Ningxi on the shoulder. "I know what you are thinking. The Byakugan of the Patriarch was taken away, and it did cause the reputation of the Hyuga clan to plummet, but this is not your fault." Ningxi was silent. This kind of thing, like the Patriarch's eyes being taken away, is not only happening in the Hyuga clan. The Patriarch of the Uchiha clan also had his Manjikyu Sharingan taken away. But Sasuke awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan, participated in the attack on the Akatsuki elite squad, attacked the leader of the Akatsuki organization on the battlefield, and other deeds almost single-handedly reversed the impact of the Uchiha Patriarch's eyes being taken away. On the other hand, Ningxi, who is also known as a genius, found that he has achieved nothing. He can do nothing. He can change nothing. He can only watch the reputation of the Hyuga clan decline. Seemingly guessing what Ningxi was thinking, Richa said, "As long as your sensei is still in the position of Naruto, our Hyuga clan still has a chance." Ningxi hesitated for a long time and said, "But now, not to mention catching up with Naruto and Sasuke, even the new members of their squad are far from being my opponents. How can an incompetent person like me boost the reputation of the Hyuga clan in the future?" Richa opened his mouth, but didn't know how to explain. He also doesn't understand what is going on in the current shinobi world. During the Third Shinobi War, although the Hyuga clan didn't have the strongest shinobi, but apart from the Kage of each village, he and his brother Hayashi were basically not afraid of any strong enemy. But with the emergence of Akatsuki and Amatsukami, he gradually felt powerless, and the Byakugan and soft fist techniques that he was so proud of seemed to have been eliminated all of a sudden, suffering all kinds of losses in the face of all kinds of strong shinobi. When it came to Ningxi's generation, it was even more exaggerated that there were freaks like Naruto and Sasuke, who had just graduated from ninja school and reached the Kage level. Not to mention Ningxi. Even an elite jonin who has experienced shinobi wars was at a loss. Looking at his son's tangled and distressed face, Richa sighed. Let it go. Maybe we are really not as good as them. Ningxi looked at Richa in shock. Father, what are you talking about? Richa shook his head, turned and walked out of the practice room, and said bitterly, the times have changed. I am afraid that our Hyuga clan is really going to be eliminated. The last 24 hours, the monthly votes will be refreshed if you don't vote. Also, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 12:07. When the setting sun gradually set, the last bit of the dazzling afterglow also disappeared. What replaced it was a dense, ink-like curtain of night. Sitting on the floor of the practice room, Ningxi looked sluggish. He thought that he could get some way from his father to reverse the current predicament of the Hyuga clan, but he did not expect that his father was even more pessimistic than him, and even gave birth to the absurd idea that the Hyuga clan has been eliminated by the times. How can our Hyuga clan be eliminated by the times? In a whisper, Ningxi was surprised to find that his tone was not as firm as he thought, as if full of doubts and hesitation. It turns out that I have been shaken for a long time. After being in a daze for a while, Ningji sighed. He is not a paranoid person who can't recognize the facts and only knows how to be stubborn. He knows very well that the Byakugan Kekkei Genkai of the Hyuga clan has lost its position as one of the two major pupil techniques of Mai in the current shinobi world. At the same time, he also understands that the strength of Sasuke and Naruto is all round. There is almost no obvious shortcoming in the two of them, especially Sasuke. Whether his ninjutsu, taijutsu, or tactical use, he is impeccable in all aspects. He is a genius who can learn and master quickly. Now that Sasuke has the Manjikyu Sharingan that can activate terrifying pupil techniques such as Amaterasu and Susa, he has left him far behind in terms of raw strength, and he can't even see the back of Sasuke chasing after him. Manjikyu Sharingan. Ningxi's expression became gloomy. This is the beginning of everything. From the moment Sasuke awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan, he no longer has the qualification to challenge Sasuke, and even the qualification to fight side by side with him. Sometimes he can't help but think that if he also has the same eyes as Sasuke, then the situation of the Hyuga clan will be different, but he understands that this is just a delusion. Unlike the Uchiha clan's Sharingan, which is full of infinite possibilities, the Hyuga clan's Byakugan has no possibility of evolution at all. After growing up so big, Ningxi has never heard of anyone in the clan who has evolved the Byakugan, and there is no related record in ancient books. It seems that the Byakugan is only at this level now. The Uchiha clan Sharingan can evolve into Manjikyu Sharingan, but our Hyuga clan's Byakugan does not have a similar ability, so it seems that our Hyuga is really difficult to keep pace with the Uchiha clan. Maybe I can surpass Sasuke and Naruto idea from the beginning. At this time, Ningxi remembered what Hyojin had said to him a few years ago, telling him not to compare himself with Sasuke and Naruto. At that time, Sensei already expected me to be in a difficult situation now. Thinking of Sensei Hyojin, Ningxi's spirit was lifted. He touched the In seal on his forehead, thinking of the ninjutsu, skills, and life experience that Hyojin taught him. His lonely face gradually regained confidence. Even if I'm really not as good as others for Sensei, I can't give up easily. Ignoring the physical fatigue, Ningxi stood up from the floor and once again put on a soft fist posture, ready to continue practicing. No matter how hard he practices, he may not be able to catch up with Sasuke and Naruto in his lifetime. But if he doesn't even try, then there is no possibility of catching up. Suddenly, a crow landed on the floor of the practice room. Ningxi was startled, and then immediately became vigilant, because in his Byakugan vision, the crow's body exuded a strange chakra fluctuation. The crow hopped on the ground in a very intelligent manner. Then it arrived in front of Niji and stared at him. For some reason, being stared at by this crow, Ningxi felt a chill in his heart because he felt that it wasn't a crow staring at him, but someone else. Just as Ningxi was about to lose his composure, the crow said, "Go pack your things." Hearing the voice from the crow's mouth, Ningxi was surprised. "Sensei?" The crow nodded. "Don't ask too many questions and don't alert others." Thinking that his teacher Hyojin had a lot of ninja crows and that his skill in using them was even better than Uchiha and Jishui, Ningxi didn't hesitate and quickly followed the crow's instructions. After quietly packing his things, Ningxi asked the crow, "Where do you want me to go?" "Follow me," the crow said, spreading its wings and flying into the sky. Although he didn't understand what his teacher wanted him to do, Ningxi didn't think too much about it and directly followed the crow's instructions. Along the way, Ningxi drank some water when he was thirsty and swallowed a soldier ration pill when he was hungry. After trekking for 2 days, he finally followed the crow to a remote cave. Looking at the dark cave in front of him, Ningxi didn't hesitate, activating the Byakugan and walking in. The cave was deeper than he thought, and after walking for more than 10 minutes, he still couldn't reach the end. Fortunately, he had the Byakugan, so he wasn't afraid of the dark. After groping his way forward in the cave for a while, he finally found a light and quickly walked over. The light came from a candlestick, and beside the candlestick, a figure was sitting quietly. As soon as he saw the familiar figure and the familiar Naruto's robe, Ningxi respectfully saluted, "Sensei." Hyojin glanced at the travel-worn Ningxi and said lightly, "You came half a day earlier than I expected." Obviously, the person sitting beside the candlestick was none other than Hyojin, or to be precise, Hyojin's impure earth form. He used a method similar to the third eye of the sand crypsis to temporarily gather his chakra into a ninja crow through the relay of the giant Tenseigan, and led Ningxi all the way from the village to here. Ningxi looked around and was a little curious. "Sensei, why did you call me here?" Sitting beside the candlestick, Hyojin, whose face was hidden in the shadows, asked, "You lost a Sasuke, lost a Naruto, and now lost a Suya. Are you willing to accept this?" Ningxi lowered his head. "I'm sorry, I've embarrassed you." Hyojin leaned forward at this time, revealing his face in the candlelight, and said sternly, "Raise your head." Ningxi quickly looked up, and his eyes met Hyojin's cracked face in the candlelight. He was suddenly shocked. "Sensei, your face?" Immediately, Ningxi disregarded etiquette, carefully looked at Hyojin, and hurriedly said, "Sensei, what's wrong with your body?" Finally noticed. After a pause, Hyojin sighed. "Because of some accidents, my body has serious problems, and now I need your help." Ningxi immediately asked, "Sensei, what do you want me to do?" Hyojin was silent for a moment and said coldly, "I want your eyes." The first update is here on the last day of March, asking for monthly votes. Chapter 1208. Ew. You want my eyes? Ningxi looked surprised, and his eyes were full of confusion. Hyojin in the shadow stared at Ningxi and said, "I need a pair of pure and fresh Byakugan to relieve the trauma on my body now." Ningxi hurriedly said, "But I am a branch family. I have been engraved with the bird in the cage." Hyojin was silent for a while, then slowly said, "Yes, because of the existence of the bird in the cage, if you choose to offer your eyes to me, your only end is death." Ningxi was confused for a while. He didn't expect that Hyojin called him here for his eyes. Looking at Ningxi's face, sometimes struggling, sometimes tangled, and sometimes frightened, Hyojin did not say anything more, but shrank in the shadow and waited quietly. Hyojin will not repeat the mistakes of Uchiha Madara, so his Tenseigan must be entrusted to a person who is absolutely trustworthy. If no one is trustworthy, it is better to keep it in a jar and slowly lose its activity than to give it to a person who cannot be trusted. For this reason, He deliberately arranged this meeting in the cave. In fact, he is not sure what choice Ningxi will make now. Maybe he will agree readily. Maybe he will refuse, or even run away. Because in this case, any choice is possible for Ningxi, and any choice is understandable. The human heart is the most vulnerable to temptation, and selfishness is the nature of human beings. So before arranging this test, Kuroda was already mentally prepared to accept everything. I don't know how long it took, Ningxi asked in a hoarse voice. Sensei, can my Byakugan really help you? Yeah, Hyojin responded softly. Niji heaved a sigh of relief and said as if he had lost all his strength. Then you can take it. Is this your final decision? Kuroda asked, enunciating each word clearly and slowly. Ningxi seemed to be speechless, but he forced himself to nod. From Ningxi's face, Hyojin saw fear and cowardice, but also determination and stubbornness. It was a very complicated expression, so he could imagine the struggle in Ningxi's heart at this moment. But Ningxi did not refuse, nor did he run away. Hyojin, who was in the shadows, raised the corner of his mouth slightly. His tone was still cold as he said, "This is not a matter of blindness. After I take away your eyes, you will definitely die. So don't worry about my identity as Naruto. I will allow you to back out." Ningxi heaved a sigh of relief, as if he had regained some of his strength. Hyojin said, "Okay, now tell me your decision again. Thank you for giving me the chance to back out, but I won't. I'm willing to offer the supercilious eye, not because you are Naruto, but because you are my teacher." After saying that, Ningxi looked at Hyojin with some anxiety. Although he had made up his mind, he still felt a little scared when he was close to death. Ha! Suddenly, there was a chuckle in the shadows. Ningxi was confused. "Teacher, what are you laughing at?" Hyojin got up and walked to Ningxi. He smiled and said, "I'm already dead, so I don't need your supercilious eye, but I need someone to help me nourish my eyes." You're dead." Ningxi was stunned. Hyojin glanced at Ningxi. "What's so strange about dying once in a while?" The confusion on Ningxi's face deepened. Hyojin did not explain how he died, but turned around and opened a mechanism. Click! Suddenly, a stone door opened. "Follow me," Hyojin said, and took the lead to step through the stone door. Ningxi hurriedly followed and found that behind the stone door was a brightly lit operating room full of various instruments, many of which he had never seen in my hospital. Hyojin walked slowly to the nutrition tank containing his Tenseigan and explained to Ningxi in a calm tone, "I'm indeed dead, but I have a way to resurrect, so you don't have to worry about this." Ningxi couldn't hide the shock on his face. Death is very solemn in his eyes. It is the end of all existence, but when it comes from Hyojin's mouth, it seems as if it's a common thing. And not only death, but even resurrection, which only happens in legendary stories, seems to be easily done by his teacher, which makes him have an indescribable strange feeling. "Just now was just a test for you, and your performance did not disappoint me." After a pause, Hyojin continued to explain, "But I do need your help with one thing. Not your Byakugan, but your living body and your Byakugan chakra. Help me nourish my eyes and keep them alive." Yes. Although he didn't quite understand what Hyojin said, Ningxi still nodded subconsciously. At this time, even if he is stupid, he can guess that Hyojin Sensei must be planning something big. And this kind of thing that needs Naruto to personally handle is undoubtedly related to the survival of the village, and even the survival of the shinobi world, so at this time his own life seems insignificant. Hyojin didn't know what Ningxi was thinking in his mind. While preparing the surgical instruments, he casually asked Ningxi, "You seem to envy Sasuke's Manjikyu Sharingan, right?" Being seen through by Hyojin, Ningxi immediately lowered his head in guilt. Kuroda has been concealing this thought very deeply, because he feels that he is a member of the Hyuga clan, and he shouldn't envy Sasuke's Manjikyu Sharingan. But his repeated failures and Sasuke's dazzling performance made him envious and look forward to having a pair of Manjikyu Sharingan like Sasuke. How great would it be if he could have a pair of Manjikyu Sharingan like Sasuke? If it was someone else, he wouldn't admit it, but in front of Hyojin he didn't dare to lie, so he just replied, I'm sorry, Sensei. I just think that the Uchiha clan's Manjikyu Sharingan is very powerful, and our Byakugan doesn't have a similar powerful pupillary technique, so sometimes I envy Sasuke. Is that so? Hyojin smiled casually. Ningxi hurriedly said, Please rest assured, I will definitely correct this misconception. Hyojin shook his head and said with a smile, Idiot, you don't have to apologize to me. I also have such a vision. Ningxi was a little surprised. Sensei also has such a thought? Hyojin gently nodded, longing for powerful strength. This is the instinct of a ninja, and it shouldn't be criticized. As your sensei, I'm sorry that I can't give you the Manjikyu Sharingan you want, but I can let you experience my eyes. Ningxi's eyes naturally fell on the nutrition can in Hyojin's hand at this time. Hyojin raised the corner of his mouth. Are you ready, young man? The second update is here. The last half of the day is for the monthly vote. After today, it will be refreshed. Don't forget it. Chapter 1209. In the face of Hyojin's inquiry, Ningxi did not realize what he would get next, and just nodded in confusion. Hyojin smiled slightly, and then pointed to the operating table. Lie down. Ningxi quickly lay down on the cold operating table and couldn't help but ask curiously, Sensei, did you really crack the caged bird? Hyojin shook his head. The caged bird is far more troublesome than you think. I didn't completely crack it. I just found a way to temporarily suppress it. With that said, Hyojin communicated with the giant Tenseigan in the sky fortress and instilled a pure Tenseigan chakra into Ningxi's body. Feeling a large amount of gentle Tenseigan chakra flowing into his body, Ningxi was surprised. This feeling was very comfortable and warm. It made him not feel tired at all, and his body seemed to be filled with endless vitality. Then, Hyojin used the authority of the giant Tenseigan to temporarily suppress the caged bird on Ningxi's forehead. In an instant, the light green caged bird curse mark on Ningxi's forehead, like the Tenseigan chakra, began to fade gradually and finally disappeared without a trace. Ningxi, who had been restrained by the caged bird, felt relaxed and free at this moment. He opened his eyes wide, and his face was full of shock. Hey, Sensei, you lifted the caged bird for me? Kuroto replied indifferently. I told you, it's just suppression. Ningxi did not struggle with the suppression or lifting. He slowly raised his hand to touch his forehead while feeling the freedom of the caged bird. After preparing everything, Hyojin introduced the operation to Ningxi. This operation is divided into two parts. The first part is to remove your eyes, and the second part is to implant my eyes. But you don't have to worry, I will take good care of the eyes you have removed, and I will replace them for you in the future. Ningxi on the operating table nodded a little nervously. Eye transplant surgery was a very frightening thing to him. But thinking that his teacher could even do the taboo of resurrection and even suppress the caged bird, in front of these shocking things, eye transplant surgery was not so important. After briefly mentioning the surgical process to let Ningxi have an idea in his heart, Hyojin stopped talking nonsense and directly started the operation. For the current Hyojin, eye removal surgery is a minor surgery that can be done perfectly with his eyes closed. So before Ningxi could react, he had already removed the Byakugan. Immediately after, he opened the Tenseigan and observed the Byakugan that had been removed. As he expected, the purity of Ningxi's Byakugan was very high, far higher than his Byakugan before the gene injection. In addition, there were obvious traces of the caged bird curse seal on the Byakugan. The caged bird curse seal really entered the body, spirit body, and even chakra at the same time. Hyojin secretly sighed. Because as a dirt soil body, there was also the caged bird curse seal on his forehead. This curse seal seemed to be completely bound to him, and even death couldn't remove it. One must know that engraving the curse seal into the brain is already a very advanced method in the ninja world. Even the roots of the Danzo only engrave the curse seal on the tongue to prevent members from leaking information. The caged bird curse seal entered the brain, spirit body, and chakra at the same time. This kind of control is completely seamless, leaving no flaws. Therefore, for hundreds of years, no branch member has been able to successfully remove the caged bird curse seal. Even Hyojin and the previous Hyuga Aoki were barely able to keep themselves unaffected. While putting Ningxi's Byakugan into another special nutrition tank, Hyojin said, "Now I'm going to implant my eyes in you, get ready." Yes, Ningxi agreed. Soon, Hyojin took out his Tenseigan from the nutrition tank. At this time, his Tenseigan has returned to the shape of an ordinary eyeball. From the appearance, it doesn't look much different from ordinary Byakugan. Hyojin, who has made a decision, didn't hesitate too much. After taking a deep look at his Tenseigan, he immediately began the transplant surgery. Like the previous removal surgery, the transplant surgery was also very smooth. In just a few minutes, Hyojin completed the surgery. Afterward, Hyojin restrained the relaxed expression on his face and stared at Ningxi on the operating table with the Tenseigan, and the expression on his face also became serious. For him, the surgery itself has never been a problem. The real problem is whether Ningxi can withstand his Tenseigan after the transplant, and because there is no precedent to analyze, he can't make accurate speculations before the transplant. But in his opinion, he and Ningxi are from the same family, and their bloodlines are similar, plus Ningxi's talent is one of the best in the family, and he is at the age of vitality, plus the blessing of Ein's seal. He should be able to withstand his Tenseigan. Slightly nervous, Hyojin swallowed non-existent saliva, then asked, "How do you feel? Is there any discomfort in your body?" Ningxi slowly opened his eyes at this time, a little puzzled. What discomfort? Obviously, until this moment, he didn't know what Hyojin transplanted in him. He thought it was Hyojin's Byakugan, so he didn't think about other aspects at all. Hyojin breathed a sigh of relief and secretly said, "It seems that he has entered a dormant state on his own initiative." Suddenly, Ningxi on the operating table screamed in pain, and then his body curled up like a shrimp ball. Hyojin frowned. "What's wrong?" My eyes hurt." Niji screamed as he convulsed. Hyojin immediately ordered, "Quick, open the Ein seal." The painful Ningxi quickly opened the Ein seal, according to Hyojin's instructions, and then a large amount of Byakugan chakra that he had stored before was released from the seal. With the lifting of the Ein seal, Ningxi's pain was reduced to a certain extent. He panted and asked, "Sensei, how could this happen? I feel that the eyes you transplanted into me are about to tear my brain apart. In front of it, my body is like a piece of white paper wrapped in a flame, and it may be burned at any time." Hyojin was a little embarrassed. It wasn't like this before. The third chapter is here. Continue to write. There should be a fourth chapter in the evening. In another hour, it will be April. Please ask for a guaranteed monthly ticket for April in advance. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 12:10. There is no doubt that this pair of Tenseigan is very conscious when it is in Hyojin's body. It will carefully take care of Hyojin's body. Even if it suppresses itself and lets itself fall into dormancy, it will not cause a serious burden to Hyojin's body. But after transplanting it to Ningxi, this consciousness seems to have disappeared. It had finally revealed its 6th Daos level, displaying a power that was not inferior to the Eye of Reincarnation. In fact, it was even more powerful than the Eye of Reincarnation. Ningxi's current situation is obviously that he can't bear the burden of the Tenseigan, and there is a mutual rejection between his eyes and his body. And in this confrontation of rejection, Ningxi's body is simply no match for the Tenseigan. The two are not on the same level at all, so Ningxi feels great pain. Even Ningxi can't do it. Hyojin is a little helpless. If even Ningxi can't do it, then you, who has a worse aptitude, may not be able to bear his Tenseigan. At this time, due to the complete release of the Ein seal, Niji's condition was slightly better. Drenched in sweat, he covered his head while gasping for breath and said, "Teacher, how can your eyes be so scary? It's like the sun. It's so hot that I can't bear it. I feel like my head is going to crack." Hyojin replied casually while thinking about countermeasures. Didn't I mention it to you before? My eyes are called Tenseigan. Oh, you can think of it as the advanced form of Byakugan. Turn, Tenseigan. Ningxi was completely stunned, as if he was struck by lightning. He always thought that Byakugan has no advanced form. At this time, after listening to Hyojin's explanation, he realized that Byakugan is the same as the Uchiha clan Sharingan. It also has an advanced form. And his sensei already has this kind of powerful and terrifying eye called Tenseigan. In hindsight, he touched his eye socket. Did you transplant the Tenseigan to me? Hyojin nodded and said solemnly, yes, but now it seems that you can't withstand my eyes. As he spoke, he rubbed his chin and muttered to himself, maybe I should try transplanting an eye first. Sigh, maybe no one can withstand my Tenseigan. Frankly speaking, Ningxi's strong rejection was far beyond his expectations. He thought that Ningxi was the best candidate, but now it seems that only Otsutsuki Samurai, whose bloodline on the moon is closer to Otsutsuki Himura, can bear his Tenseigan. In addition, Nagato, Xianglin, and other descendants of the Sage of the Six Paths, although their physique is tyrannical and their vitality is amazing, because they don't have the Byakugan chakra, they may not be able to withstand his Tenseigan. Listening to Hyojin's mutterings, Ningxi was both surprised and self-abased. When he learned that the Byakugan of the Hyuga clan also had an advanced form, he felt joy from the bottom of his heart, thinking that with hard work in the future, he may also be able to awaken the Tenseigan. But when he learned that he was not even qualified to bear his teacher's Tenseigan, his heart suddenly turned to ashes, and he clenched his fists in pain. Damn it! How can I be so incompetent? Soon, the effect of Ningxi's Yin Seal began to fade. Kuroto hasn't been practicing the Yin Seal for a long time. Coupled with the fact that his daily training tasks are extremely heavy, the amount of chakra that can be stored in the Yin Seal is not much, so the accumulation of chakra in the Yin Seal is very limited. And as the effect of Yin Seal faded, the great pain hit Ningxi's whole body again. But this time, he didn't cry out in pain, but clenched his teeth, tightly grasped the edge of the operating table with his hands, and used his will to resist the pain of his body and spirit body. It's useless. Hyojin on the side sighed faintly. Ningxi gritted his teeth and said, Sensei, I can definitely help. Hyojin shook his head and said calmly, if you can't, then you can't. It has nothing to do with your will. Ningxi still didn't give up. On his flushed cheeks, blue veins bulged high. Hyojin turned his head and glanced at the instrument that monitors Ningxi's physical signs. It shows that Ningxi's heartbeat and blood pressure are abnormal, and even his cell activity is soaring rapidly. This shows that Ningxi's body is trying to adapt to the Tenseigan, but even at this point, his body still can't bear the burden of the Tenseigan. Hyojin advised, give up. It's meaningless to persist like this. If you go on like this, you will die. With that, he took out a tranquilizer and was ready to inject it into Ningxi's body to help Ningxi calm the abnormalities of his body, and then remove the newly implanted Tenseigan for Ningxi. He now realized that his Tenseigan may have completely surpassed Madara Uchiha's Rinnegan in terms of level. In today's ninja world, except for himself, no one is qualified to touch his Tenseigan unless it is the real Otsutsuki. Because even if you get it, you can't control it. And at this time, he realized a little bit that Uchiha Madara needed someone to help warm his eyes, but when he looked up, he found that no one could bear it. However, just as Hyojin was about to inject the tranquilizer, Ningxi, who was already a little confused, was still murmuring, Sensei, I can definitely help. I don't want to be a bird in a cage all the time. I also want to be like Sasuke, like Naruto, to pursue my dreams freely. Listening to Ningxi's murmur, Hyojin's thumb stopped pushing the injection, and a trace of hesitation flashed on his face. It's really troublesome. Soon, Hyojin spat lightly, then quickly removed the gourd artifact from his waist and opened the seal on the gourd artifact. Crash! In an instant, a majestic Ryumai chakra overflowed from the gourd artifact. At this time, Hyojin said to Ningxi, who was gradually losing consciousness on the operating table, you only have one chance. If you can become the Ryumai's Jinchuriki, You may be able to bear my Tenseigan. Now I'm giving you this opportunity. It's up to you whether you can grasp it or not." Then, Hyojin told Ningxi how to sign a contract with the Ryumai, and then retreated to the side. If Ningxi can successfully sign a contract with the Ryumai in such an extreme state and become the Ryumai's Jinchuriki, then he is qualified to bear the Tenseigan. If he can't do it, then Hyojin can't do anything about it. Ningxi didn't have a choice in the previous fates. But this time, as his teacher, Hyojin put the opportunity to control his own fate in front of him. Fourth, thank you to the students who gave yesterday. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 12:11. I feel that my performance is not bad. So, please support me with your monthly votes, and vote for me with your guaranteed monthly votes. In the coming April, I will strive to maintain this state. Everyone's support is the biggest motivation for me to update. So please continue to support me. Requesting monthly votes. Requesting recommendation votes. Requesting subscriptions. Requesting rewards. The above is all serious. This is not an April Fool's joke. Oh, intersection. Oh, Naruto's world in the eyes of reincarnation. Requesting monthly votes at the beginning of the month. Currently typing. Please wait a moment. After the content is updated, please refresh the page to receive the latest update. Chapter 12:12. Although his consciousness was fading, Ningxi did not give up. After hearing Hyojin's whisper, he forced himself to form a seal to form a contract with the dragon vein. Even if he was fully conscious, he might not be able to form a contract like this. But he understood that this was the only chance he had to control his own fate. He did not want to be a useless person, and he did not want to be a bird trapped in a cage forever. Therefore, although his hands were trembling, they were extremely determined. Hyojin, who had retreated to the side, watched this scene silently. Giving Ningxi a chance to form a contract with the dragon vein was the limit of what he could do. After all, he was not at Samsara level yet, so he could not directly bestow power like the Samsara deity. As for the dragon vein, he did not deal with it on a whim. During the ceremony, he realized that his contract with the dragon vein had already affected his breakthrough to Samsara level. This was because this kind of contract, similar to the human pillar strength, would cause his connection with the dragon vein to be too close, causing his spiritual body and chakra to not be pure enough. This situation did not affect him much in the first and second stages of the ceremony, but when it came to the third stage, which involved raising the level of life, the effects gradually emerged. One of the most direct effects was that the overly close contract would cause a part of the dragon vein's chakra to unknowingly participate in the crucial chakra fusion. And the chakra fusion in Hyojin's body was carefully calculated by him. There was a very subtle balance between the different attributes of the chakra. Once other uncontrollable chakra entered, it would interfere and even break this balance. Secondly, this kind of contract, similar to the human pillar strength, involved the soul, and the dragon vein's chakra was too large, which would affect Hyojin's spiritual body in many ways. These effects were not necessarily bad. For example, when Hyojin was under an illusion, the dragon vein could invade Hyojin's body on its own and dispel the illusion for Hyojin. But at the same time, this would cause Hyojin's spirit body to be impure. Purity was what allowed Hyojin to go even further than Hiriko and Danzo. It was precisely because he had solved the problem of soul impurities and body rejection that he was able to easily complete the first stage, the second stage, and the third stage that no one had ever explored before. That was why, for the sake of purity, he had to give up his identity as the human pillar of the dragon bloodline and use his pure body to break through the bloodline succession net. This was also the reason why he did not immediately sign a new contract with the dragon vein after being tainted earth reincarnation. If it were not for Ningxi's stubbornness, he might have handed the dragon's vein over to Xianglin or Bai, allowing one of them to become the new dragon's vein human pillar. If Xianglin became the human pillar of the dragon bloodline, then she could better use the Rinnegan and use the natural reincarnation technique to resurrect Hyojin as soon as possible. If became the human pillar of the dragon bloodline. With Bai's talent in controlling natural energy, he could almost exert the full power of the dragon bloodline. At that time, he could become an important source of chakra in Hyojin's ritual. Of course, these ideas were disrupted by the changes in front of him. Just as Kuroto's thoughts were gradually drifting away, a roar suddenly erupted from a gourd. It resounded throughout the entire operating theater and shook the surgical instruments on the trays to the side, causing them to clatter. Hyojin's eyes suddenly became cold. He knew that this was the reaction of the dragon bloodline after being stimulated by the contract. And whether this contract could be concluded or not would soon be clear. If the dragon bloodline accepted the contract, then Ningxi would become the second human pillar of the dragon bloodline after Hyojin. If the dragon bloodline refused to accept, then Hyojin must immediately take action and remove the Tenseigan for Ningxi. Ningxi also seemed to be aware of this. He endured the pain and exhaustion and looked nervously at the gourd. At this time, a dragon-shaped chakra phantom slowly emerged from the gourd, looking at Ningxi from a distance, and then looked at Hyojin, who retreated to the side. Hyojin nodded at the dragon-shaped phantom. The dragon-shaped phantom hesitated for a while, then suddenly plunged into Ningxi's body. Ningxi was startled for a moment, and then immediately showed a trace of joy on his face that had been suppressed. Immediately afterward, a large number of dragon bloodline chakra poured into his body, and then it was greedily absorbed by the Tenseigan. After absorbing enough dragon bloodline chakra, the Tenseigan finally calmed down. "Sensei, did I succeed?" As soon as his voice fell, Ningxi fell on the operating table. Looking at Ningxi, who fainted because of extreme fatigue, Hyojin said with emotion, "This kid is more reckless than me." 3 days later, Ningxi, who woke up, found Hyojin outside the cave and hurriedly saluted. "Sensei, thank you." Hyojin said, "You don't have to thank me. You risked your life for this opportunity, and I didn't give you the Tenseigan. I just asked you to help me nourish it temporarily. There is no need to thank me." Ningxi quickly promised, "Please rest assured, I will definitely protect your Tenseigan." "Protect it?" With a smile, Hyojin curled his lips and said, "You'd better think about how to protect yourself. Because they are from the same family and are related by blood, Hyojin and Ningxi's gene sequences are similar. The only difference is the amount of recessive special gene sequences turn on. Therefore, other people who have transplanted Tenseigan only have the power of Tenseigan at most, but Niji has transplanted Tenseigan. It is possible that because of the stimulation of Tenseigan, the recessive special gene sequence in his body will be activated. And this is not only a great opportunity, but also a great crisis. The principle is similar to the injection of genetic fluid. The only difference is that the method of stimulation is changed from genetic fluid to Tenseigan. This is actually an unexpected discovery by Hyojin when he examined Ningxi's body in the past 2 days. The reason is probably because of the previous ritual that caused his Tenseigan to step into the 6th-path level, and has some abilities that even he doesn't understand. In short, this pair of Tenseigan, which is connected to his bloodline, has become one of the strongest treasures in the shinobi world today. And the danger of genetic recombination caused by the activation of special gene sequences is self-evident. It is definitely an overly optimistic statement to describe it with the word 9 out of 10. The reason why Hyojin didn't delve into the genetic fluid is because it has nothing to do with technology. It is purely because the genetic recombination after activating all the special gene sequences is too dangerous. He has simulated it many times through the instrument, and the success rate is less than 0.1%. In other words, even if all the current Hyuga clansmen gather together to use the genetic fluid, there is a high probability that they will be wiped out and no one will succeed. The first update is here, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 12-13. Of course, there is still a difference between the stimulation of Tenseigan and the stimulation of gene fluid. When the gene fluid is injected, It will violently activate all the special gene sequences and immediately detonate genetic recombination, so that the body will either be reborn or die in the continuous disintegration. The stimulation of the Tenseigan is more like an unconscious behavior, so the degree of stimulation is slightly lighter, and it will not have an immediate effect like the gene serum. It's just that the better the talent, the more obvious the stimulation effect will be. So Ningxi was in a coma for 3 days. After taking a serious look at Ningxi, Hyojin asked, "How do you feel?" "Very good." The excitement on Ningxi's face was hard to hide. Hyojin's Tenseigan's vision is much clearer than his Byakugan's. It's like the resolution of the monitor has been raised, and the whole world is clear. In addition to the most basic improvement of insight, he also faintly found that his chakra has undergone obvious changes, whether it is quantity or quality. There's been a clear growth. "Then let's try the pupillary technique." Hyojin pointed to the forest in the distance. Yes, Ningxi was immediately eager to try. He has always been looking forward to getting the same powerful pupillary technique as Sasuke. So this moment is the moment he has been dreaming of. Facing the forest, he took a deep breath and then slowly raised his arms. After enduring the Tenseigan, he obtained the most basic Tenseigan pupillary technique, rain manipulation, so he can try to use it without Hyojin's guidance. Soon, he used all his strength to launch rain manipulation. In an instant, a violent, repulsive force spewed out from his palm, forming an invisible storm, sweeping the forest in front of him. Rumble. The violent storm carried boundless chi waves, emitting a series of deafening roars. The forest in front of him disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye in this storm, as if a charcoal drawing on a canvas was erased by an eraser. This, as the initiator, Ningxi suddenly froze in place, and his face was full of astonishment. Hyojin couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. "Why are you so forceful?" Looking at the lush green forest that had turned into a desolate wasteland, Ningxi was shocked and scared. He stammered, "I didn't know it would turn out like this." Hyojin held his forehead with his hand and said speechlessly, "I asked you to try your ocular technique, not to demolish my home. Now that you've done this, I have no choice but to abandon my base." Ningxi quickly apologized. "I'm very sorry." "Forget it." Waving his hand, Hyojin said, "It's hard to avoid accidents on the first try. I've made many mistakes in the past, but you have to remember that you are the one controlling the power, not the other way around. Don't lose yourself." "I will remember it." Ningxi nodded seriously. At this time, Hyojin glanced at the forest that Ningxi had just swept in the distance, and he was secretly surprised. To be honest, he didn't expect that the power of Ningxi's rain manipulation would be so strong. This is almost comparable to the power of his full strength when he was alive. And Ningxi has just adapted to the state of the Tenseigan. Obviously, it is impossible to achieve the effect he had when he was alive. This undoubtedly shows that the ocular power of the Tenseigan has improved after the ritual, and it has improved a lot. The technique you just used is called rain manipulation. It is a technique that manipulates repulsion and attraction. It can repel nearby objects and attract distant objects. Immediately, Hyojin explained to Ningxi while actually demonstrating rain manipulation, slowly sucking a gravel on the ground in the distance into his palm. Ningxi suddenly said, "Sensei, this is the technique that the Akatsuki leader used to destroy the village, right?" Hyojin nodded and said, "Well, the Rinnegan also has a similar ability, but the repulsion and attraction of the Rinnegan are two different techniques called Shinra Tensei and 10,000 Mammoth Tensei, respectively, but the principle is similar to our technique." Ningxi immediately said, "The leader of Amatsukami seems to have a similar technique." Ahem. After coughing twice, Hyojin said, "Next, I will teach you an ocular technique unique to the Tenseigan. I call it Tenseigan Chakra Mode ! Tenseigan Chakra Mode. Ningxi's mind moved, and his mind immediately thought of Naruto's Nine Tails Chakra Mode, Seiyu's Sage Mode, and 4 Generations Lei Ying's Thunder Release Chakra Mode. Watch carefully. After explaining, Hyojin demonstrated the Tenseigan chakra mode hand seals. Ningxi imitated Hyojin's hand seals, and then at the end, he shouted softly, Tenseigan chakra mode, open. Voila! In an instant, a soft Tenseigan chakra wrapped Ningxi's whole body, lifted his body, and slowly floated. Ningxi was at a loss for a moment. He was not surprised by the magic of Tenseigan chakra mode, but his current state reminded him of a person, a legend of the ninja world. Hyojin at this time curled his lips and smiled. You can succeed on the first try, not bad. Ningxi, who was floating in the air under the Tenseigan chakra mode, looked at Hyojin in a daze and stammered. Sensei, you are the leader of Amatsuki, Yama? Yes. Hyojin nodded casually. At this moment, the deeds of the leader of Amatsuki, Yama, flashed in Ningxi's mind one by one. He was shocked to find that the ninja world has been under the control of Byakugan. Those Homasubi of Amatsuki who have Manjikyu Sharingan are all subordinates of Hyojin. So the Sharingan has always been under Byakugan. It's just that I didn't know. Ningxi was completely confused. The concept that he has established for more than a decade was shattered at this moment. The powerful Uchiha and the powerful Manjikyu Sharingan, he thought, were all subordinates of Hyojin, who has the Byakugan. And the Byakugan that he thought has been eliminated by the times turns out to be hiding a terrifying power that can suppress the entire ninja world and defeat the leader of Akatsuki, who has the Rinnegan Eye. Landing on the ground, Ningxi stared at Hyojin, opened his mouth and asked, Sensei, is this true? Is all this real? Hyojin was speechless. Isn't it just creating an organization with only a few people? Is it worth making such a fuss? Ningxi then asked, Are you really a sage? Hyojin was even more speechless. I told you long ago, I'm a dead man now. The second update is here, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Also, I would like to thank the students who gave me gifts today. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 12-14. Dead. The excitement on Ningxi's face suddenly disappeared, as if a bucket of cold water was poured over him. Even now, he still can't adapt to the fact that Hyojin is dead. Deep in his heart, he still thinks that it's just a joke by his sensei. But since he already has the Tenseigan, he knows very well that the state of Hyojin in front of him is very strange. Immediately, Ningxi asked worriedly, Sensei, can you really be resurrected? Hyojin didn't explain much and just nodded gently. Suddenly, Ningxi thought of something, and his expression suddenly froze as he said in surprise, If you are dead, then who will stop the leader of Akatsuki, Nagato? Everyone knows that the only one who can stop the leader of Akatsuki, Nagato, is the leader of Amatsuki, Yama. Now that he learned that the leader of Amatsuki, Nagato, is his sensei, Hyojin, and that Yama is dead, Ningxi suddenly realized that the balance in the shinobi world seems to have been broken, and no one can stop the leader of Akatsuki, Nagato. Hyojin was a little relieved. It's good that you can think of this yourself, so the news of my death must be kept secret until the moment of my resurrection. After realizing the seriousness of the matter, Ningxi nodded hurriedly. Once the news of Amatsuki's leader Yama's death is leaked, the Akatsuki may immediately take action, and at that time, the shinobi world will usher in another catastrophe. Next, Hyojin began to guide Ningxi in condensing and using the truth-seeking ball. The biggest advantage of Tenseigan chakra mode compared to other modes is that it can bypass the limit of the realm and condense the truth-seeking ball that can only be condensed by a complete six-path shinobi. And this can be said to be the key to the Tenseigan chakra mode crushing other modes. Because apart from the Tenseigan chakra mode, there is no other method that can allow a ninja to instantly cross the boundary of six-path, which defines the level of life, and allow an ordinary person to temporarily possess the power of six-path, becoming a pseudo-six-path with the full combat power of six-path. Looking at the black ball floating in front of him, Ningxi was both surprised and delighted. Teacher, are these the truth-seeking balls that symbolize the power of immortals? Yes. Nodding, Hyojin urged, "Don't just stand there. Maintaining the truth-seeking jade is a heavy burden for you, so don't waste any more time. Hurry up and try the golden wheel reincarnation explosion." "Yes," Ningxi quickly responded, then held his breath and activated the truth-seeking ball according to Hyojin's instructions. In an instant, the truth-seeking ball that was floating beside Ningxi rushed into the palm of Ningxi's right hand. Soon after, it transformed into a golden sword that was as dazzling as the sun. Hyojin pointed to the wasteland that had become ruins in the distance. "Give it a try." Ningxi did not hesitate and immediately slashed down with the sword. Swish! The golden light drew an arc in the air and then disappeared into the ground. Soon after, a roar broke out. After the smoke and dust dispersed, Ningxi saw a deep gully in front of him. There were many cracks extending from the edge of the gully. It seemed as if the earth had been chiseled open by something. "Is this the power of immortals?" Niji gasped for breath as he stared at the destruction he had caused with a dull look in his eyes. Beside him, Hyojin said non-committally, "The technique you just used is called the Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion. It's a high-level use of the truth-seeking jade. It can easily break through the control limit of the truth-seeking jade, which is only 70 meters. Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion," Ningxi muttered softly. Hyojin continued, "Its power will increase according to the number of truth-seeking jades used. What you used just now was the weakest level, which could only destroy one street. And if we throw in more truth-seeking balls, even the moon hanging high above our heads will be sliced in half." Just listening to Hyojin's introduction, Ningxi was already looking forward to it. On the other hand, there's another technique called the Silver Wheel Reincarnation Explosion. If the Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion fuses the suction force with the truth-seeking jade and uses the suction force to converge all the power into a line, then uses the line to break the surface. Then, the Silver Wheel Reincarnation Explosion fuses the repulsive force with the truth-seeking jade to form a storm that can overturn everything. Hyojin casually introduced another technique of the Tenseigan chakra mode. Hearing this, Ningxi wanted to give it a try, but when he tried to condense another truth-seeking jade, his body staggered. Not only did he fail to condense another truth-seeking jade, even the Tenseigan chakra mode on his body dissipated. Seeing this, Hyojin said, "Don't try anymore. You just barely adapted to my Tenseigan. Entering the Tenseigan chakra mode and using it once is almost your limit. If you mess around again, you'll destroy the balance that you've worked so hard to establish, causing your body to be overwhelmed and die on the spot." Half squatting on the ground, Ningxi gasped and nodded. After the excitement subsided, the exhaustion from the depths of his soul immediately swept over him, causing him to be in a trance. So there's no need for Hyojin to emphasize it. He knew that he had reached his limit. But even so, looking at the forest that was raised by him and the ravine he created, his heart was still full of a sense of accomplishment. He sighed with emotion. So this is the power of an immortal. Even if I only transplanted Sensei's eyes and obtained a part of Sensei's power, I can already reach such a terrifying level. Now, Ningxi is convinced that his teacher, Hyojin, must be a real immortal. Because in his opinion, he only obtained a part of his teacher's power, and he already has such a terrifying destructive power. He can't imagine how strong his teacher was in his heyday. Hyojin walked in front of Ningxi and said, "From now on, there's only one thing you need to do, that is to familiarize yourself with and master the power of the Tenseigan." Ningxi nodded quickly, yes. He also knows that with his current mastery of the Tenseigan, it's difficult to use it in actual combat. If he's not careful, he will drain himself dry. He doesn't even dare to spar with his peers, for fear of destroying the village due to negligence. Hyojin went behind Ningxi and said, "I'm going to place a few marks on your body now. Don't resist." Yes. Although he didn't know what Hyojin was going to do, Ningxi still responded honestly. Soon, Hyojin left a chakra on Ningxi's body and arranged a psychic technique. The chakra left behind can allow Hyojin to observe the outside world through the ninja crow before obtaining Ningxi's vision and seeing everything Ningxi sees from a distance. The psychic technique he set up is a contingency plan. Once Ningxi is in danger, he can use the reverse psychic technique to forcibly intervene and summon Ningxi to his side. Of course, all of this must be done with the giant Tenseigan as a relay, and Ningxi himself does not resist, otherwise he can't do these arrangements. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 12:15. After that, Ningxi asks some questions about how Hyojin died and about Emetsukami. Hyojin doesn't have the energy to explain these things now, so he casually said a few perfunctory words and then asked Ningxi to concentrate on adapting to the Tenseigan and not to think about other things. So Ningxi, who has long been accustomed to obeying Hyojin's orders, didn't ask any more questions and obediently adapted to the Tenseigan. A few days later, when Ningxi's state gradually stabilized, Hyojin sent Ningxi back to the village. Through these few days of observation, he found that the activity of his Tenseigan in Ningxi's body has not decreased, and it has been maintained in a relatively stable state. In this state, once Hyojin resurrects and retrieves the Tenseigan, he can immediately carry out the ritual again, and he doesn't need to spend extra time to warn the Tenseigan and let it recover from its dormant state. It can be said that Ningxi is now a living nutrient tank. Storing the Tenseigan in Ningxi can save a lot of unnecessary time for Hyojin. After sending Ningxi away, Hyojin immediately abandoned this temporary base and returned to the Sky Fortress. As Ningxi worried, Hyojin must now start the resurrection immediately, because no one can predict when the Akatsuki organization will take action again. Although Nagato was impacted by the concept of six-path proposed by Hyojin last time, he didn't suffer much damage. So although the probability of Nagato choosing to stay dormant is very high, the possibility of Nagato suddenly attacking can't be completely ignored. In addition, Otsutsuki Samurai on the moon also has to be guarded against. After all, Otsutsuki Samurai has already obtained Hayashi's Byakugan, and the most important component of Hyojin's gene fluid is Hayashi's genes, so the purity of Hayashi's Byakugan may be inferior to Spark's, but it is definitely outstanding in the Hyuga clan. Now, even if Otsutsuki Samurai already has the Tenseigan, Hyojin will not be surprised at all. Soon, Hyojin summons Xianglin. Seeing Hyojin return to the Sky Fortress, Xianglin, who knows what Hyojin has been doing these days, asked curiously, "Sama, have you dealt with the Tenseigan?" Hyojin nodded. Xianglin hesitated for a moment and said, "Is it really safe to give it to others?" Hyojin smiled and said, "Don't worry. There is nothing in this world that is unbreakable. No matter how many methods are laid out, there may be mistakes, but compared to laying some kind of powerful seal like Madara Uchiha, leaving some kind of hidden curse mark, emotions and fetters are obviously more effective curse marks." Then, Hyojin told Xianglin, "Get ready for the transplant operation tomorrow." In a short period of time, if he wants to improve Xianglin's control of the Rinnegan, so that Xianglin has the ability to use high-level pupil techniques such as Earth Exploding Heaven Star and Rebirth Heaven Technique, the simplest way is to repeat the successful path of Nagato. Let Xianglin, who has the Uzumaki clan Sage Body, fuse with the Senju clan Sage Body, and obtain a Sage Body close to the Sage of the Six Paths. According to Hyojin's judgment, Nagato and Xianglin, the two Uzumaki clansmen, are very outstanding even in the Uzumaki clan. Nagato's specialty should be the huge amount of chakra. In this regard, Xianglin, who is also a member of the Uzumaki clan, is obviously not as good as Nagato. And Xianglin's specialty is the high quality of chakra, which has the healing ability of yang release. Just a bite can obtain a healing effect far beyond medical ninjutsu. So, when it comes to talent, it is not easy to compare who is stronger between Nagato and Xianglin at present. But one thing is certain, that is, even if Xianglin is not as good as Nagato, it will not be much worse than Nagato. Therefore, Nagato can complete the sage body of the six paths through the transplantation of the first-generation cells and complete the physical transformation, and Xianglin can probably do the same. Xianglin already knew about the transplantation of the first-generation cells, so he was not surprised. "My lord, I have already prepared. We can start the operation now. Don't worry about this day." Hyojin shook his head. He still needs to prepare himself. After all, this is related to his resurrection, so he can't be negligent. After letting Xianglin prepare, Hyojin quietly thought about it. Resurrection is naturally his current top priority, and it is something that must be done immediately because he is now the fifth-generation Naruto of the My clan. Although he can hide it for a while through various previous arrangements, he certainly can't hide it for too long. Secondly, the threat of the Akatsuki and Otsutsuki Semi won't allow him to die for too long. What's more, many of the arrangements seem to be tight, but if it is for a long time, there may be all kinds of unpredictable emergencies. So in order to avoid long delays, he must be resurrected as soon as possible. And the key to resurrection is tomorrow's operation. As long as the operation is successful, then according to his speculation, Xianglin should have the ability to perform the reincarnation innate technique after the adaptation period. Not only that, as long as Xianglin has the body of six-path level sage, coupled with the support of the giant Tenseigan, with her terrifying physique, it is very likely that she will be able to survive after using the reincarnation innate technique. After all, Hyojin's body is intact, and Xianglin doesn't need to consume too much Jinjutsu's power to repair his body, and Hyojin's realm also fell in a ritual. He is no longer a six-path level-strong ninja, and his life level has also changed back to an ordinary ninja, so resurrection is not difficult. It must be known that in the original story, Nagato, who did not transplant the first-generation cells, destroyed the My clan, and went through a series of battles to resurrect thousands of ninjas and villagers in my village. If Xianglin has the body of a six-path sage and only resurrects one person, then the probability of survival is very high. After arranging the resurrection, Hyojin started to consider the arrangements for the second ritual. This time, he planned to carry out the resurrection and the ritual at the same time. In other words, after the resurrection, he will not waste any time and immediately carry out the second ritual to break through the bloodline net. This requires him to arrange all the preparations for the second ritual before the resurrection. As soon as he thought about the preparation for the second ritual, his mind was filled with a myriad of thoughts. Whether it was the redesign of the altar, the selection of the location for the ritual, or the repair of the 6 clones, they were all troublesome matters without exception. However, compared to these, the more troublesome thing was to obtain the source of chakra. Previously, Hyojin thought that he had made sufficient preparations, but in reality, the chakra he had prepared was only 1/10 of what was needed for the ritual. Therefore, this time, he had to think of a way to get more chakra. Here's the second update. I'm looking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, I would like to thank all the students who gave me gifts today. Thank you all. Chapter 12:16. After calming down and carefully sorting out his situation, Kuroto found that the biggest problem that troubled him was not the resurrection, nor the problems related to the Tenseigan, or the selection of the location of the ritual, or the restoration work of the main body and the 6 clones, etc., but the chakra source needed for the ritual. Because except for the chakra source, the other problems are troublesome, but can be solved. Only the chakra source needed for the ritual really gave Hyojin a headache, because after experiencing the ritual, he personally understood how exaggerated the chakra amount needed to break through the Kekkei Genkai net. All the preparations he had made before were only 1/10 of what was needed. Holding his forehead with his hand, Hyojin frowned slightly and whispered, "Where should I get so much chakra?" As soon as he thought of chakra, 2 keywords flashed in his mind. The first keyword is naturally tailed beast. It can be said that as long as a ninja is from one of the 5 great shinobi villages, they will immediately think of tailed beasts, because tailed beasts are almost synonymous with a huge amount of chakra to some extent. But Hyojin can't take this path. First, except for the 1, 3, 7, and 9 tails, the other 5-tailed beasts have fallen into the hands of the Akatsuki organization, and it is very difficult to take them back from them. Second, even if Hyojin gathered all the 9-tailed beasts, it is still not enough for the chakra required for the ritual. Unless he can send all the 9-tailed beasts back to the body of the Outer Path Golem and resurrect the 10 tails, the chakra amount may be enough for him to carry out the ritual. But in this way, it is equivalent to him repeating what the Akatsuki organization did. Not only did he have to completely defeat the Akatsuki organization, take away Nagato's Rinnegan, and gain control of the heretic demon statue, but he also had to personally kill Naruto, the disciple that he had painstakingly cultivated, as well as Gaara and Yagura, the 2 loyal subordinates. Then, he had to face Black Zetsu's scheme and face the furious sage of 6 paths. After thinking for a while, Hyojin immediately dispelled this unreliable idea. The second key was natural energy. One must know that even the chakra fruit that allows an ordinary Otsutsuki Kagaya to instantly step into the Kekkei Genkai net is a product of the divine tree absorbing the natural energy of the shinobi world. Although Kagaya belongs to the Otsutsuki clan, before she swallowed the chakra fruit, she obviously didn't have the strength of a 6-path shinobi. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been threatened by the natives of the shinobi world at that time. But after swallowing the chakra fruit, she instantly gained the power of Kekkei net and opened the 9 Magatama Rinnegan between her eyebrows. From this, it can be seen that the natural energy scattered between the heavens and the earth that can support the divine tree to bear the chakra fruit is more powerful than the tailed beasts, and it is also more valuable to excavate. From a certain point of view, Kagaya, who is known as the ancestor of chakra, also created chakra by absorbing the natural energy of the shinobi world. Immortal arts? Thinking of this, Hyojin's eyes gradually became serious. Since the path of collecting tailed beasts is not going to work, mastering immortal arts has become the path in front of him that he must go through. And currently, Hyojin knows a total of 4.5 ways to practice immortal arts. Among them, the 3 most important ways are Mount Myabka, Ryuchi Cave, and Shikatsu Forest. These are the 3 holy lands of the shinobi world. Ninjas like Jiraiya, Naruto, Medicine Master Satsuki, and Medicine Master Satsuki, who inherited the genes of Orochimaru and Medicine Master Satsuki, all obtained immortal arts from these 3 holy lands. The 4th way is Yugo, who mutated due to the erosion of the high concentration of natural energy. Shinobi, who was cast with the curse seal by Orochimaru, and Haku, who was cast with the heavenly curse seal and then taken back, accidentally mastered immortal arts. The source of mastering immortal arts is Yugo, who mutated. The last way is the Miko-sama of the Land of Demons. In fact, from the fact that the Miko-sama has the ability to prophesy, it can be seen that the Miko-sama of the Land of Demons also mastered some kind of technique to use natural energy. This is also the reason why the Miko-sama has a huge amount of chakra that is not inferior to the tailed beasts. Hyojin doesn't intend to take the path of the 3 holy lands. It's not that he has any prejudice against the 3 holy lands, or that he doesn't want to lose face, but he simply feels that the way the 3 holy lands practice immortal arts is not pure enough. Or rather, it's pure for the species of the holy lands, but not for humans. For example, Jiraiya, who practiced immortal arts in Mount Myaboku, after entering Sage mode, part of his body will turn into a frog. And Naruto, who practiced immortal arts in the Ryuchi Cave and Medicine Master Do, after entering Sage mode, their bodies will turn into a snake. So, instead of going to the 3 holy lands to practice immortal arts that are not pure for humans, it's better to try the 4th way, which is to ask Orochimaru for some information related to the curse seal, or to ask Haku about his experience in mastering immortal arts. As for the last half of the path, Hyojin suddenly remembered something. He quickly got up and walked towards his secret vault. Soon, he found the items entrusted to him by the previous Miko-sama one by one. At the beginning, the Miko-sama of the Land of Demons entrusted a total of 4 items to Hyojin. Except for the sealed bell that has been given to Ziyun, the other 3 items are still in Hyejin's hands. These 3 items are the symbol of the status of the Miko-sama, the Miko-sama's crown, a seal scroll that recorded the various sealing techniques of the Miko-sama, and a bottle of medicinal pills. Putting the Miko-sama's crown and the seal scroll aside, Hyejin picked up the bottle of medicinal pills. There were originally 3 medicinal pills in this bottle, one of which Hyejin gave to Ziyun when she was 10 years old, according to the agreement with the previous Miko-sama, and the remaining 2 were gifts from the previous Miko-sama to Hyejin. The function of the medicinal pills is very simple, which is to help the Miko-sama master natural energy. If someone who does not have the bloodline of the Miko-sama takes the medicinal pills, although they can't directly master natural energy, they will get a chance to get close to nature and understand nature. In history, there have been examples of Miko-sama's guards who mastered natural energy after taking the medicinal pills. Holding the medicinal pill bottle, Hyejin's eyes gradually deepened. He began to think about how high the probability of him mastering immortal arts would be if he obtained the experience and skills of Haku, coupled with the assistance of the 2 medicinal pills in this bottle. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 12:17. It was still difficult for Hyejin, who hadn't mastered the immortal arts, to make an effective assessment of how much potential the immortal arts could provide. But one thing he was sure of was that as long as he mastered the immortal arts, the problem of the shortage of chakra source needed for the ritual should be alleviated to a certain extent. However, he was still in the state of dirted soil body, so he couldn't practice the immortal arts. So now he could only collect as much information as possible and try it after he was resurrected. At this time, Hyejin's eyes moved to the witch's crown on the side, and he secretly pondered. In fact, there had always been a huge chakra source beside him. This chakra source was not someone else, but the current witch of the country of demons, Ziyun. The previous Miko-sama had personally told Kuroto that Zion was the most talented one among all the Miko-sama. So the previous Miko-sama made the seal bell to seal Zion's power. Morio is the dark side that the witch of the country of demons stripped from her body. It is the other half that the witch tried to abandon, and its chakra amount has exceeded the ordinary tail beast. I'm afraid it is only under 9 tails, so, as the bright side, the chakra amount of Ziyun should be equivalent to the dark side of Morio. With just a simple analysis, Hyejin could speculate that the chakra amount of Ziyun, who had completely unsealed, should not be less than Morio. If the tail beast was used as a measurement, then the chakra amount contained in Ziyun should only be under the most special 9 tails, which was stronger than other single 8-tailed beasts. In other words, in addition to Morio, Hyejin also had Ziyun, the chakra amount source, which was below 9 tails and above 8 tails. Do I need to go that far? Hyejin whispered to himself, and his tone was full of conflict. Obviously, Ziyun's potential was not just her chakra amount, which was above 8 tails. Her real potential was actually the fusion of her dark side, Morio, and the complete state of the witch. The difference between a split body and a complete body could not be simply measured by addition and subtraction. For example, the chakra of the 9-tailed beast was far less than the 10-tailed chakra after the fusion. In the same way, once the split body of Ziyun and Morio fused, the chakra amount would not be as simple as 1 plus 1. Hyejin had previously estimated that once Ziyun reaccommodated her dark side, Morio, and returned to her complete state, she would be the only one who could catch up with Naruto and Sasuke and break through to this 6th Daos level. However, the risk of doing so is also huge. If he was not careful, Ziyun might be fused with Morio, giving birth to a demon close to the 6th Daos level. And this was the reason why Hyejin was so conflicted. If he succeeded, not only would he get a subordinate close to the 6th Daos level, but he would also get a very powerful chakra source, which would greatly alleviate the lack of chakra needed for the ritual. But if he failed, he would have to face a powerful enemy close to this 6th Daos level, who was skilled in all kinds of strange sealing techniques, sinister, cruel, and bloodthirsty. While playing with the Miko's crown, Hyojin gradually fell into deep thought. In fact, everyone has a dark side, and Miko-sama's method of forcibly stripping away her dark side was obviously a failure and undesirable. Or it could be said that it was because of Miko-sama's attempt that caused endless trouble to the Miko-sama. Because Morio and Miko-sama are two sides of the same body, as long as Miko-sama doesn't die. The Morio that is a part of Miko-sama can never be destroyed, so Miko-sama can only seal Morio. But a seal can't last forever. Even the seal formed by the Sage of the Six Daos can be broken, let alone a seal cast by Miko-sama who only has half of her strength. As long as time passes, there will inevitably be all kinds of flaws in the seal, and every time a flaw appears, it will be a test of life and death for Miko-sama. Because the strength of Morio and Miko-sama are close, and Morio obviously doesn't have such a moral bottom line, so Miko-sama is often on the defensive or even at a disadvantage. Ziyuan's mother died in this kind of disaster. Ziyuan is the most talented Miko-sama. Maybe she can correct the mistake made by Miko-sama and put things back on track. Stripping away the dark side and sealing it is not the best way to do it. The most appropriate way is to leave the dark side in one's body, seal it with oneself, and use it as a sharpening stone to sharpen oneself, constantly reminding oneself. At the beginning, Miko-sama wanted to get rid of the dark side once and for all, but the result was endless harm. And Ziyuan's innate talent as the strongest Miko-sama may be to correct this mistake. From this point of view, with Ziyuan's talent as the strongest Miko-sama, and with the help of Hyojin, it is indeed the best time to deal with this problem left over from history. After making up his mind, Hyojin decided to give it a try. However, this kind of attempt is related to the Miko-sama's life, so he must get the consent of Ziyuan, because only if Ziyuan voluntarily accepts Morio, such a fusion may be successful. With a thought, he controlled the ninja crow and sent a message to Ziyuan, who stayed in the village. Next, he left the secret warehouse and went to the operating room to prepare for the fragrant phosphorus transplant tomorrow. Caw-caw! Suddenly, a crow's caw interrupted his thoughts. He summoned the ninja crow with mist on its wings and removed the communication scroll from the ninja crow's leggings. Then, he opened it and looked at it, and his brows gradually wrinkled. This communication ninja crow was sent from the Mist Village. A week ago, the Mist Village found a huge, unidentified, ironclad ship in the waters of the Country of Water. Then, the ironclad ship went all the way through the waters of the Country of Water and then directly landed in the Country of Tea. After passing through the Country of Tea by land, it disappeared in the southeast bay, shared by the Country of Fire, the Country of Wind, and the Country of Water. Ironclad ship. The first thing that flashed in Hyojin's mind was the Sky Ninja Village, because the Sky Ninja Village did have some ironclad ships, but the Sky Ninja Village had been destroyed by him many years ago, and even the leader of the Sky Ninja Village, Shino, was captured by him, so it was unlikely that it was the Sky Ninja Village this time. Moreover, the ironclad ship could actually land and cross on the road, which made him a little curious. Does such a thing exist in the shinobi world? Although he was a little concerned, he obviously couldn't take the time to investigate at the moment, and such a trivial matter wasn't worth investigating in person. So he gave an order to the Mist Village to closely monitor the ironclad ship, and if there was any news, report it immediately. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 12:18. Hyojin stared at Xiang Lin on the operating table with a gloomy face and asked, "How is it? Do you feel better now?" "Sir, I'm fine." Xiang Lin answered weakly with sweat all over his face. Hyojin sighed. "Well, forget it. Stop for a while. You'd better take a rest." With that, he patted Xiang Lin's shoulder gently, then turned and sat on the bench beside him. Just now, Hyojin performed a first-generation cell transplant operation on Xiang Lin, but the operation did not go well. In the end, he had to use the giant Tenseigan to absorb chakra and urgently extract the would-release chakra from Xiang Lin's body, which barely prevented the first-generation cells from completely rampaging in Xiang Lin's body. This step is really not easy. After letting out a sigh of relief, Kuroda secretly sighed with emotion. He has long known that the way for Nagato to get rid of his disability and improve his physique is to transplant the first-generation cells and integrate the blood of the Uzumaki and Senju to obtain a sage body close to the sage of the six paths. But he has not transplanted the first-generation cells for Xianglin. The first-generation cells are not so easy to fuse. What Nagato can do does not mean that Xianglin can do it. As far as the current situation is concerned, only the Uchiha bloodline and the Sharingan are clearly helpful for the transplantation of Hashirama cells, and most of the successful cases of Hashirama cell transplantation are related to the Uchiha bloodline and the Sharingan. For example, Uchiha Madara, Obsidian, Danzo, and Jishui, Itachi, and Shinichi, which were successfully transplanted in Hyojin's hands. Because the Yin release chakra contained in the Sharingan can effectively neutralize the Yang release chakra contained in the first-generation cells, so the stronger the power of the Sharingan, or the more the number of Sharingan, the better the suppression effect on the first-generation cells. The reason why the old and weak ninja, like Danzo, can barely bear the first-generation cells is because of the Sharingan. In contrast, the sage body's ability to withstand the cells of the Hashirama is much worse than the Sharingan. This is not limited to the Uzumaki race. Even the sage body of the Senju race, which is the same as the Hashirama, is also difficult to withstand the cells of the Hashirama. This is not Hyojin's unfounded speculation, but there is an actual example. After becoming Naruto, he specially consulted the files of the first-generation cell transplantation program carried out in the village. According to the records, there were many elites of the Senju clan among the volunteers at that time, because after the death of the first generation, the Senju clan was the most eager to reproduce the wood release. But the mighty cell transplantation program ended in a fiasco, and even the volunteers of the Senju clan didn't survive. All of them died in the rampage of the first generation cells. Fortunately, Hyojin has the giant Tenseigan. If the first time doesn't work, he can try the second time, and if the second time doesn't work, he can try the third time. As long as he keeps trying, he will eventually succeed. It's just that Xianglin has to suffer a bit. After all, it's not a good experience to bear the rampage of the first-generation cells. Hyojin even suspects that Nagato's success is also due to the Outer Path Golem. Because in some aspects, Nagato's Outer Path Golem is very similar to his giant Tenseigan. Both have the ability to absorb chakra. Therefore, even if Nagato failed to suppress the first-generation cells at that time, he could theoretically use the Outer Path Golem to extract the would-release chakra from his body in order to contain the rampage of the first-generation cells. After a while, without waiting for Hyojin to speak, Xianglin on the operating table stood up and said, "Sama, I have rested well. My village." Zen didn't disturb her guards. She tiptoed out of the house and then quietly left the village under the guidance of a ninja crow. Although the power of the witch in her body was sealed by the bell made by her mother, Ziyuan is after all a student who has experienced a whole set of ninja education in Mai. She is not the weak girl who was sealed in the original time and space. Her strength is close to the level of a chunin, so there is no problem for her to go out alone. While Ziyuan sneaked out of the village, Xiaoli rushed to Ningxi's house and shouted, "Ningxi, get ready, our class has a mission." Ningxi, who just returned to the village yesterday, was a little surprised. "What mission?" Xiaoli urged. "I don't know, it seems to be an urgent mission. Kai-sensei is waiting for us. Let's go." Ningxi didn't dare to delay. He quickly put on his ninja gear and rushed to the assembly point with Xiaoli. Guy and Tian have already been waiting at the assembly point. Seeing Ningxi and Xiaoli finally arrived, Guy didn't say a word of nonsense and directly led his team to leave the village. On the way, Guy introduced, "This time we're performing an investigation and support mission. Because the incident happened suddenly, the mission is very urgent." Ningxi calmly asked, "Kai-sensei, what is the specific content of the mission?" Guy shook his head. The village doesn't know much about the specific situation at present. We only know that a group of unidentified enemies landed from the sea in the land of wind and the land of water and attacked several villages along the coast. After the investigation team of San Crypsis went to investigate, they had a conflict with the enemy and were defeated. Because Kazakage is still in Mai, San Crypsis sent a request to Mai to cooperate with the investigation. After confirming that the mission has nothing to do with the Akatsuki organization, Ningxi secretly breathed a sigh of relief. What he is most worried about now is that before Hyojin-sensei resurrects, the Akatsuki organization will launch another operation again, because he is very clear that in the entire shinobi world, only Hyojin-sensei can defeat the leader of the Akatsuki organization, Nagato. Shally excitedly cheered. Great, our class can finally carry out a real mission. Tion also echoed. Yes, finally we don't have to stay in the village every day. The corners of Ningxi's mouth rose, and he was also a little eager to try. Today, he is not the same as before. Not only did he transplant Sensei Hyojin's unparalleled Tenseigan, but he also signed a contract with the Ryumyaku and became the Ryumyaku's Jinchuriki. Compared with a few days ago, his combat power is completely different. At this time, even if he faces a Kaga-level expert, he has the confidence to win. Guy, the leader of the team, said seriously, as ninjas, we have to treat every mission carefully, not to mention the identity of the enemy this time is unknown, so we must not be careless. After being scolded by Guy, several people in the team quickly restrained their frivolity. After a long journey, Guy's team finally entered the territory of the Land of Water, but at the rendezvous point with the San Crypsis investigation team, they did not see the San Crypsis investigation team. After some searching, they finally found the bodies of all the members of the San Crypsis investigation team in a calm more than 10 kilometers away from the rendezvous point. The first update is here. Condolences to the heroes who sacrificed themselves in the fight against the plague this time. Chapter 1219. Squatting next to the bodies of the San Crypsis investigation team, Ningxi said in a deep voice, "The body temperature is close to the ambient temperature. The time of death is at least 5 hours." Tian, who looked around, added, "There are traces of ninja tools and ninjutsu around. The battlefield should be here." Shally was a little puzzled. There are not many traces of fighting here. Does it mean that the strength of the two sides is not at the same level, and the San Crypsis investigation team was completely destroyed by the enemy without any fierce resistance? Ningxi got up and nodded gently. Well, judging from the footprints left nearby, the number of enemies should be a lot, at least a dozen people. But it seems that only 1 or 2 people attacked, and from the wounds on the bodies of these San Crypsis ninjas, it can be seen that the person who attacked used a large and sharp weapon. Guy, who was on guard on the side, said with satisfaction, "Your analysis is good." Ningxi asked, "Kai-sensei, what should we do next?" Guy pondered for a moment and said, "The San Crypsis investigation team has been completely destroyed, and our support mission has failed, but we still have the responsibility of investigation. So we must figure out who the enemy is and what their purpose is." Ningxi, Xiaoli, and Tian nodded in unison. They don't want their first official mission to be declared a failure because of the accidental annihilation of the San Crypsis team. Soon, Kaiban followed the footprints left by the enemy and began to track. He doesn't know whether the other party had no intention of covering up the traces at all, or the other party wasn't a ninja, but with Ningxi, Kaiban tracked the footprints very smoothly. Of course, Ningxi did not use the Tenseigan, but tracked the footprints in the Byakugan state. With the insight of Hyojin's Tenseigan, even if it's just an ordinary Byakugan state, all the traces in the surrounding environment can be clearly reflected in Ningxi's mind. So much so that Ningxi doesn't need to stop to distinguish, he can track all the way. This abnormal scene shocked not only Little Li and Tian, but even Guy was shocked. After a long time, Ningxi, who was at the forefront of the team, suddenly gestured to his companions behind him. Then, his figure flashed, and he hid behind a large tree. The rest of the team knew that Ningxi had discovered the enemy, so they immediately spread out and hid in various nearby bunkers. After hiding themselves, the few of them slowly poked their heads out. Taking a closer look, they discovered that there were two groups of people in a valley far away. One of them was wearing heavy armor, and the style of their clothing was completely different from the shinobi world, while the other side was actually two ninjas wearing the Red Cloud uniform of the Akatsuki organization. Judging from their appearance, they seemed to be Kakuzu and Hidun of the Akatsuki. Who are those people in heavy armor? How did they get involved with the Akatsuki? For a time, these two questions flashed in the minds of Kaiban and the others. But once things are related to the Akatsuki, even if they're just ordinary members of the Akatsuki, they must not be taken lightly. So Guy immediately gave a meaningful look to Tian, who was in charge of communication. Tian understood and quickly retreated into the grass, and then quietly summoned a communication eagle to pass the information back to the village. In the valley, Kakuzu stared at the group of aliens in front of him and said coldly, "We have helped you solve the ninjas of the Sand Crypsis according to the agreement. Now it's time for you to pay the reward." Hidun, who was carrying the Bloody Moon scythe on his shoulder, yawned and said, "Hurry up and finish it. It's so boring." Feeling the contempt of Kakuzu and Hidun, the group of aliens on the opposite side were filled with righteous indignation. However, the leader of the group was a middle-aged man wearing a monocle. He chuckled and took out a box, saying, "Thank you for your hard work." Kakuzu opened the box and found a blue crystal the size of a child's palm. Immediately, his face turned cold and said, "Hide, it doesn't look like gold." The middle-aged man wearing a monocle on his left eye, named Hyde, explained, "I'm sorry, we can't take out that much gold, but this grayer stone is a treasure far beyond gold. I'm sure you'll be satisfied with it." A golden-haired young man standing next to Hyde said, "You two ignorant fools. Compared to the stone of grayer, gold is nothing." Hyde quickly scolded, "Timsy, don't be rude." At this time, Kakuzu focused his attention on the palm-sized blue crystal stone in the box, which was called the Stone of Grail by the aliens. Touching it lightly, Kakuzu was surprised to find that there was a strong chakra reaction coming from it. "Huh!" Fei Duan also exclaimed in surprise. Both of them are experienced people in the shinobi world, but this is the first time they have seen such a crystal with such a rich chakra concentration. Seeing the slight change in their expressions, Hyde smiled and said, "You two should be satisfied, right?" Kakuzu and Hidun looked at each other and nodded slowly. Hyde said, "Then I'll trouble you two with the next task. As long as you catch the leader of the merchant group for us, we will definitely pay you a satisfactory commission." After putting away the box, Kakuzu stretched out 2 fingers and said, "In 2 days, we will hand him over to you." Whoosh! Whoosh! As soon as his voice fell, Kakuzu and Hidun disappeared in front of the aliens. After Kakuzu and Fei Duan left, the golden-haired youth called Timsy quickly asked Hyde, "Lord Hyde, why are we working with these 2 unknown people?" And he even gave them a precious grayer stone? Hyde smiled and said, "The situation on this continent is much more complicated than we expected. You've seen the enemies called the Sand Crypsis ninjas, right? Their strength should not be underestimated." Timsy said, "Those Sand Crypsis ninjas are just SOSO. I can deal with them as well. As long as we find the vein of grayer stone, no one can stop us from building our ideal country. The 2 ninjas named Akatsuki are just tools in our hands. Hiring them is just to save precious time." Hyde said in a gentle tone, "Don't worry, Timsy. As long as we find the vein of grayer stone, no one can stop us from building our ideal country. The 2 ninjas called Akatsuki are just tools in our hands." Without a doubt, this group of aliens came from the continent on the other side of the sea. They traveled thousands of miles across the sea for only one purpose, and that was to find the grayer stone vein hidden at the border between the Wind Country and the Sea Country. However, after landing in the Wind Country, they encountered the ninjas of the Sand Crypsis, and the 2 sides had a conflict, which then attracted the attention of the Akatsuki organization. So, as the leader, Hyde hired the Akatsuki organization, who was familiar with the situation of the ninja world. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who tipped today. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 1220. Because of the distance, Kaiban didn't hear what the two sides said in the valley, but he vaguely saw that the two sides seemed to have reached some kind of deal, and the two Akatsuki members gave a box to the Akatsuki members, and then the two Akatsuki members left in a hurry. There's something wrong with these aliens. Ningxi's expression was solemn. Because he knows Sensei Hyojin's current state, he is particularly sensitive to the activities of the Akatsuki, and the strange scene in front of him naturally aroused his uneasiness. Rumble. Suddenly, a roar came from the distant valley, and the earth seemed to tremble. Kaiban and the others looked in the direction of the sound, only to see those armored aliens boarding an ironclad warship that could travel on land, and leaving the valley amidst the flying sand and stones. Shally asked Ningxi, "Who are those people?" Ningxi shook his head. Not to mention Ningxi, who recently graduated from shinobi school, even Guy, who has experienced the Third Shinobi War and carried out many missions, can't answer the question. At this time, Tenzin asked, "Kai-sensei, the information has been sent back to the village. What should we do now?" Guy said seriously, "Since this matter involves the Akatsuki, we can't just ignore it. No one can tell whether the Akatsuki is planning a new round of conspiracy against the 5 great shinobi villages. So as a shinobi of Mai, Guy must investigate this matter to the end, even if it's risky." Okay. Ningxi and the others nodded without hesitation. Because the tracks left by the ironclad warship on land are too eye-catching, Kaiban didn't follow the aliens in the ironclad warship, but followed the direction in which the Akatsuki members left. The chase continued all the way until night time, when Kaiban accidentally discovered a battlefield where ninjas had fought in a small forest. Ningxi immediately activated Byakugan and glanced around the battlefield that still exudes a burnt smell, then pointed to a pile of rocks in the distance. "There is a survivor over there." Shally hurriedly rushed over, cleared the rocks, and dug out a heavily injured and unconscious Sand Crypsis ninja. "Marky!" After seeing the face of the injured Sand Crypsis ninja, Guy exclaimed. Tian asked, "Kai-sensei, do you know him?" Guy nodded calmly. "Well, his name is Maki, an elite jonin of the Sand Crypsis. Not long ago, he was nominated by the 4 generations of Kazekage to become one of the elders of the Sand Crypsis. He is a very powerful ninja." Hearing that the other party was an elder of the Sand Crypsis, Tian did not dare to be negligent. She quickly bandaged Maji's wounds. After a while, Maki woke up and saw Guy and the others. He quickly said, Quickly go and save Old Man Heian. We can't let the Akatsuki find the stone of Grayer Vein." "Grayer Stone?" Kai was stunned for a moment before he asked, "What is that?" After taking a deep breath and calming himself down, Marky told him the whole story. It turned out that in a canyon at the junction of the Land of Wind and the Land of Wind, there is a hidden ruin of the ancient empire. The ancient empire that had long been annihilated in the long river of history once had a glorious civilization, and the cornerstone that created their glorious civilization was a kind of crystal called the Grayer Stone that Marky had just mentioned. This stone contains a large amount of chakra, which can be used for both construction and destruction. The rise and fall of the ancient empire are closely related to this stone of Grayer. The Old Man Heian that Maki mentioned, on the surface, is the leader of a caravan traveling around various countries, but in fact he is a descendant of the ancient empire, and he knows the specific location of the ancient empire ruins. When Maki commanded the Sand Crypsis investigation team to investigate the aliens, they accidentally found that the aliens were chasing the Heian's caravan, so they rescued the caravan. Margie then learned from He Yin that the target of the foreign races was the ruins of the ancient empire. It was also the location of the Grayer Stone Mine. However, just as Maki was about to send this information back to the Sand Crypsis, the aliens actually colluded with the Akatsuki organization. Facing the Akatsuki organization, the Sand Crypsis investigation team could only retreat, and in the end, in order to cover the escape of Maki and Heian, all the members of the Sand Crypsis investigation team died, and Maki was eventually caught by the Akatsuki organization and was defeated. The important person who knows the location of the ancient empire ruins, Heian, was also captured by the Akatsuki organization. Maki emphasized, if it's only those aliens who found the Stone of Greyer Vein, there's still room for redemption. But if the Akatsuki organization finds the Stone of Greyer Vein, then the problem is serious. Guy thought for a while, and then asked seriously, is the Stone of Greyer really that powerful? Maki replied, I fought with a young alien who has a Stone of Greyer embedded in his body. The other party can perform many powerful ninjutsu without hand seals, and his recovery speed is amazing. Plus, the Akatsuki organization is also involved. So even if the Stone of Greyer is not as magical as the old man Heian said, it is by no means something that could be ignored. Like most of the ninjas in the 5 great shinobi villages, once they find out that the Akatsuki organization is involved, even if it's a trivial matter, they will treat it with extreme caution. Not to mention that the old man Heian kept bragging to him about how the Stone of Greyer is the source of all disasters, and how he shouldn't be greedy for it, and so on. Then what are you going to do? Guy obviously believes in Maki's judgment. Not only him, but even Ningxi, Xiaoli, and Tian on the side also feel that the situation is getting serious. Maki shook his head and said, I won't die. You don't have to worry about me. Just go and save Heian. As long as we save that old man from the Akatsuki organization, we can ensure that the Stone of Greyer Vein won't fall into the hands of the Akatsuki organization. Xiaoli anxiously said, but where are we going to save him now? Ningxi pondered for a while and said, we don't need to look everywhere. As long as we follow those aliens quietly, we should be able to find the traces of the 2 members of the Akatsuki organization. Yes, Guy agreed with Ningxi's judgment. There is no doubt that compared to the swift movements of the Akatsuki members, the ironclad ship that plows a long trench on the ground is obviously easier to track. Moreover, those aliens are cooperating with the Akatsuki organization. So as long as they follow the aliens, they will naturally be able to find the Akatsuki members as well as the leader of the caravan, Heian, who was kidnapped by the Akatsuki organization. The situation is urgent. Guy asked Tian to leave some medicine for the injured Maki and immediately led the team out. As expected, Kaiban quickly found the ironclad ship of the aliens and followed it all the way to a canyon, where he saw Fei Duan and the leader of the caravan, Heian, who was kidnapped by the aliens. The 2 groups of people only exchanged a few words before they escorted Yin into a hidden cave on the side of the canyon wall and disappeared into the canyon. Could it be that the Stone of Greyer Vein is in this canyon? For a moment, Kaiban and the others looked at each other. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 12:21. He thought that he still had a chance to save the old man and stop the Akatsuki from finding the Stone of Greyer Vein, but he didn't expect that the Akatsuki and the aliens would meet up in the canyon where the Stone of Greyer Vein is hidden. Oh no, Ningxi secretly said, not good. The other party's speed was so ferocious that it completely exceeded his expectations, causing him to be caught unprepared for a moment. Xiaoli and Tian also looked at Guy anxiously, waiting for Guy's order. Guy calmly weighed the situation and said, it's too late to wait for the village's reinforcements. We can only take action ourselves. Even if the village received the information they sent and immediately sent reinforcements, it would take at least 2 or 3 days for the reinforcements to arrive, and the Akatsuki and the aliens are already on the way to the Stone of Greyer Vein. It's obviously too late to wait for the reinforcements. Fortunately, there are only 2 Akatsuki members participating in this incident, and they aren't the most dangerous ones. So Guy feels that his team isn't completely helpless. After making up his mind, Guy left a mark for the reinforcements and led the team to sneak into the canyon. Inside the canyon, The seemingly ordinary canyon has a completely different world inside. After turning into a cave, the aliens and the Akatsuki finally stepped into the ruins of the legendary ancient empire. From the size of the ruins, this legendary ancient empire should really have a glorious civilization, which made everyone even more interested in the stone of grayer vein. Taking the opportunity to look around the ruins, the aliens exchanged glances with each other and seemed to be thinking about when to deal with the two Akatsuki members. As the leader of the mutated tribe, Hyde, who was wearing a monocle on his left eye, looked gentle. Although he had a faint smile on his face, his heart was boiling with killing intent. To him, the Akatsuki was just a tool that he picked up, and now that he has successfully found the stone of grayer vein, the Akatsuki naturally has no value to him anymore. Jiao Du and Fei Duan, who were walking at the front of the group, did not seem to notice the strange thoughts of the foreign races. They nonchalantly escorted He Yin into the depths of the ruins. The whole team was strangely quiet. Only He Yin, who was being escorted forward, kept saying, "The stone of grayer is not a power that you can control. You will destroy this world." However, He Yin's shouting did not attract anyone's attention. Whether it's Kakazu, Fei Dan, or the leader of the mutated race, all of them are looking forward to the possibility that the stone of grayer mine really has the power to destroy the world, as Old Man Han said. Not long after, the group arrived in front of a cliff. At the very front of the cliff was a stone platform formed by 3 giant stone pillars. The stone platform was carved with exquisite reliefs. It looked like an altar, but it also looked like some kind of mechanism. In front of the stone platform was a pitch-black, bottomless abyss. Coming to the stone platform, Kakuzu asked He Yin, "Where is the mine?" He Yin subconsciously glanced at one of the reliefs on the stone platform, then suddenly realized something, immediately retracted his gaze in panic, and stammered, I don't know." Although He Yin's reaction was very fast, it was still noticed by Kakuzu and the leader of the outsiders, Hyde. Both of them turned to look at the relief that He Yin had just glanced over with a playful look on their faces. Soon after, a golden-haired youth named Tenseigan walked over and stepped on the relief sculpture. Gotcha! In a split second, the entire stone pillar with the carvings suddenly caved in like an elevator, bringing everyone into the seemingly bottomless abyss. Swish, swish, swish. At the moment when the stone pillars sank, Kaiban, who has been secretly following the Akatsuki and the mutated race, had no choice but to appear and flash to the sinking stone pillar. At this time, on the rapidly sinking stone pillar, Fei Dan raised the bloody crescent scythe in his hand and pointed it at Kaiban and said with a smile, "Yo, so it's Mai's rats. I always thought it was those idiots from the Sand Crypsis who were following us." Kaiban said in a deep voice, "No matter what you want to do, we will stop you." Fei Dan laughed. "You're talking big." Just like Fei Dan, Kaka didn't care too much about the sudden appearance of Kaiban, and said calmly, "Fei Dan, don't mess around. Find a mine first." TSK. Fei Dan lightly spat, then put down the bloody crescent scythe in his hand. Because the stone pillar is still rapidly sinking, in order to avoid accidents, Kaiban and the others are not in a hurry to make a move, and the two sides are facing each other on the stone pillar. After a long time, the speed of the stone pillars sinking gradually slowed down, and finally stopped at the entrance of an underground palace. The mutated race, Akatsuki, and Kaiban walked down the stone pillar, facing each other, and came to an incomparably spacious underground palace. In the center of the underground palace, there's an obvious magic circle that looks a bit like a psychic circle. On the walls of the palace, the history of the ancient empire is painted. These beautiful murals record the whole process of the empire's rise and fall, and the last mural is empty. Only darkness seems to symbolize complete death and destruction. At this time, the blond boy Tenseigan pulled out the short sword at his waist and looked at Hyde. "Sir." Hyde smiled, then opened his arms and said to the Akatsuki and Kaiban, "Thank you for your help, allowing us to arrive here smoothly, but for the sake of our great ideal country, please die here." Following Hyde's chuckle, all the mutated race took out their weapons. Fei Duan carried the Bloody Moon scythe and looked at Hyde with interest. "You want to fight with the Akatsuki?" Hyde smiled contemptuously. "Just a group of ninjas, and you dare to touch the Stone of Grayer? Only I am qualified to have such power, and you can only die." Hyde has seen the ninjas of the Sand Crypsis, and he knows that although the ninja's ninjutsu is somewhat difficult to deal with, that's all. But now, there are only 6 ninjas in front of him, and they are hostile to each other, so he doesn't put the Akatsuki and Kaiban in his eyes at all. Kaiban and the others were also surprised at this time. They did not expect these mutated race to be so arrogant, not even putting the Akatsuki in their eyes. It seems that we have underestimated these mutated race. With such suspicion, Kaiban started fighting with the mutated race. Because Hyde's tone was too arrogant, the cautious Ningxi did not dare to be careless, and as soon as the battle started, he fiercely attacked the 2 heavily armored mutated race giants with iron hammers. Bang, bang. After the 2 sides crossed each other, Ningxi looked back and found that the 2 mutated race giants who were hit by soft punches just fell straight to the ground dead. Ningxi was instantly confused. It's going to be a new week soon, and the leaderboard will be updated, so I implore everyone to recommend and support me. It's no trouble at all. Please. Also, thank you to the students who donated today. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 1222. Inside the Air Fortress. Grayer's Stone. Hyojin's eyes were stunned, and then he suddenly understood. Because he had been busy with the first-generation cell transplant surgery for Xiang Lin, he didn't have the energy to pay attention to Ningxi all the time. When he was free, he learned about the Grayer Stone through the chakra left on Ningxi. Yes, he just completed the surgery and successfully transplanted the first-generation cells for Xiang Lin. The surgery lasted for 2 or 3 days, and a total of 17 transplants were performed. In the end, not to mention Xiang Lin, even he, who had the impure soil body, felt exhausted. But fortunately, after unremitting efforts, the first-generation cell transplant was finally successful. From this transplant surgery, Hyojin found that if the chakra's amount of the transplanted was enough, the success rate of the transplant would be improved accordingly. Nagato's success, in addition to the Rinnegan and the Outer Path Demon statue, his own huge amount of chakra may also be an important reason for his success in fusing with the first-generation cells. Compared to Nagato, Xiang Lin had a big disadvantage in this aspect, because Xiang Lin's specialty was not the chakra's amount, but the high quality and special healing ability. But no matter how high the quality of Xiang Lin's yang release chakra was, it was impossible to be higher than the yang release chakra that contained the characteristics of the divine tree in the first-generation cells. Therefore, there was a big gap between Xiang Lin and Nagato when it came to fusing the first-generation cells. Under normal circumstances, this gap could not be crossed. Even with the help of a pair of Rinnegan, the probability of Xiang Lin successfully transplanting the first-generation cells was very small, and as long as there was a rampage, it was enough to kill her. But Hyojin's technology and the existence of the giant Tenseigan helped Xiang Lin to bridge the gap that she could not overcome, allowing her to do the same thing as Nagato. Glancing at Xiang Lin, who had just finished the surgery and was so tired that she fell asleep on the operating table, Hyojin slowly withdrew from the operating room. Hyojin, who had the impure soil body, would not feel tired, nor did he need to rest physiologically. However, the state of the impure soil body was not static. During the days he was under the impure earth reincarnation, he did a thorough inspection of his impure earth physique. He found that the sacrifice for the impure earth physique was slowly rotting away. He speculated that when the sacrificial offering completely decayed, his filthy earth body would also disintegrate along with it. And the simplest and most effective way to slow down the decay of an offering is to seal it in a coffin, like how Orochimaru dealt with Hashirama and Hashirama's impure earth form, and only come out when it's needed. Hyojin obviously couldn't seal himself in a coffin, so as time passed, his impure earth physique decayed every day. Because of the decay of the offerings, the strength of his impure earth physique would also decline. Therefore, Hyojin had to make all the preparations for his second ritual as soon as possible. Stone of Grayer. Thinking of the task that Ningxi was performing, Hyojin's figure flashed and disappeared. Inside the underground palace, Ningxi, who had prepared for a hard battle, was surprised. He didn't expect that the seemingly sturdy and well-equipped alien warriors would be so vulnerable. At this time, the battle in the underground palace was still going on. The most powerful of the foreign races was undoubtedly their leader, Hyde. Aside from him, the 3 female armored knights and the golden-haired youth, Tenseigan, who had been standing by Hyde's side, were also quite powerful. In detail, Camilla, who could transform her body into a bat form, Ranka, who could transform into an ape form, and Kazuo, who could transform into a werewolf form. These 3 female knights all had the destructive power of Jonin. In the original timeline, Ranka was able to fight back and forth with Gaara, who was about to become the 5th Kazekage. He even broke into Gaara's absolute defense at one point, and Camilla also briefly suppressed Kankuro. As for the blonde boy Tenseigan, who had the Stone of Grayer embedded in his body, he was even stronger. In terms of destructive power and recovery, he was even comparable to some elite Jonins. This was also the reason why the aliens led by Hyde didn't put ninjas in their eyes. However, this time they obviously had the wrong idea. Whether it was Guy and Ningxi and Kai's team, or Kakuzu and Haido in the Akatsuki organization, they weren't ordinary ninjas, and these aliens weren't a match for these ninjas in terms of tactical skills and combat experience. Therefore, except for Hyde, who didn't make a move, the other aliens were quickly defeated by Kaiban and the Akatsuki organization. Looking at his subordinates on the ground, Hyde's face was filled with horror. Haido, who was carrying the Bloody Moon scythe, licked his lips and said with a mocking expression, "Hey, do you have some misunderstanding about us ninjas?" Hyde was shocked and angry, and he suddenly tore off the robe on his body. Instantly, Hyde, the leader of the aliens, changed his body like the 3 female knights, and 4 red balls appeared behind him. Truth-seeking ball. My side and the Akatsuki organization were both shocked, and their eyes immediately gathered on the red balls behind Hyde. However, they soon discovered that the 4 red balls floating behind Hyde only looked like the truth-seeking ball, but they didn't have the power of the real truth-seeking ball. Taking advantage of the short moment of surprise, Hyde's figure flashed, and he suddenly appeared beside Han, who was hiding in a corner and shivering. Then, he grabbed Han's collar and twisted him up. "If you want to live, tell me quickly, where is the Stone of Grayer mine?" It's there." Old Han, who couldn't breathe after his collar was tightened, could only point above his head. Hyde immediately threw Old Man He-Yen to the ground, then leaped up. The 4 red balls behind him instantly turned into 4 black wings, carrying him into the air. Then, Hyde stretched out his right hand towards the place where Old Han had pointed. Boom! In an instant, a loud explosion sounded, and the place where Hyde's right hand was pointing suddenly exploded violently. It turned out that not only did Hyde have the ability to change his body like the 3 female knights, but he also had a Stone of Grayer embedded in the back of his right hand. As Hyde used the Stone of Grayer to attack, the stone wall at the top of the palace suddenly broke open, and as pieces of bricks fell, the light green mine inside was revealed. The Stone of Grayer mine? At this moment, everyone in the underground palace, including Hyde, who was flying in the air, looked at the Stone of Grayer mine hidden in the brick wall. Here's the first update, asking for recommendation votes on Monday. It's nothing, please everyone. Here's the first update, asking for recommendation votes on Monday. It's nothing, please everyone. End of this chapter. Chapter 1223. As the rubble on the walls of the palace gradually peeled off, more and more of the Stone of Grayer vein hidden behind the walls were revealed. Everyone looked up and found that the Stone of Grayer vein was light green, like agate or emerald. The whole body was emitting a bright halo, illuminating the dim underground palace. Is this the true power of the Stone of Grayer? I feel it. I feel a steady stream of power pouring into my body. Ha ha ha, this feeling is great. All of a sudden, Hyde burst out laughing. It was obvious that due to the Grayer stone that was embedded on the back of his right hand, after the brick wall that sealed the mineral vein was broken, the mineral vein that was hidden in the brick wall had a strong resonance with the Grayer stone on the back of his hand. Therefore, the huge amount of chakra contained in the vein through the stone of Grayer on the back of his hand continuously poured into his body. Not only Hyde, but the other blonde boy Tenseigan, who had a stone of Grayer embedded in his body, also stood up from the ground. Guy saw this, and a trace of surprise flashed on his face. This was because this blonde boy Tenseigan was knocked down by him. Just like Ningxi, because Hyde's tone was too arrogant, Guy mistakenly thought that these people were very strong. So he opened the fourth gate of the 8 inner hidden gates, the Gate of Pain, as soon as he attacked. However, after exchanging blows, he realized that these aliens were not as strong as he had imagined, so he hurriedly adjusted the strength of his attacks. Even so, he still heavily injured the golden-haired young man, Tenseigan, and broke several of his ribs. Based on Guy's experience, it was impossible for the other party to get up after such a serious injury. But now, the other party stood up as if nothing happened. Ningxi, who had activated the state of Byakugan, quickly warned everyone, "Everyone be careful." The chakra in their bodies suddenly became stronger, and it's still rapidly increasing. With the insight of Hyojin's Tenseigan, the changes in Hyde and Tenseigan's bodies naturally couldn't be hidden from Ningxi. But Ningxi didn't expect that the chakra in their bodies would soar to this point in just a few seconds, almost 10 times more than the original base. On the other side, Kakuzu of the Akatsuki organization carefully observed and said, "This stone of Grayer mine is really extraordinary." Although he didn't use Byakugan and couldn't directly observe the changes in Hyde and Tenseigan's chakra, with his experience, it wasn't difficult to notice that the chakra in their bodies was skyrocketing. Fei Duan, who had always been lawless, stared at the mighty Hyde in the sky and curled his lips. TSK, that guy is really annoying when he's shouting in the sky. Hyde was still laughing unscrupulously at this moment. The chakra that was poured into his body by the stone of Grayer mine even overflowed at this moment, forming a thick light green mist that surrounded him in a form visible to the naked eye. And as the chakra continued to skyrocket, Hyde's power also became stronger. "I am God." Hyde, who was floating in the air, slowly opened his arms. At this time, there was no longer panic in his eyes. Instead, it was endless madness. He had never had such great power. No, he had never even imagined such great power. Next to the stone of Grayer mine, under the impact of this power, he felt that he was no longer a human, but a high and mighty god. Old Man Heian, who fell to the ground and trembled, saw that the stone of Grayer mine was finally exposed. His spirit suddenly collapsed, and he shouted, "It's over, it's all over. This is not a power that we insignificant humans can covet. The whole world will be destroyed because of your greed." Ha ha ha. After laughing for a while, Hyde said to the group of ninjas below, "Do you feel fear, you lowly ninjas?" Looking at Old Man Heian, who seemed to have collapsed as if the end of the world had come, and then looking at the arrogant Hyde flying in the air, whether it was my side or the Akatsuki's side, they all had a strange expression. Hyde then shouted, "Now, I will let you feel the power of God." Whoosh! Before Hyde's voice fell, a purple lightning flashed across his body. Immediately after that, Hyde, who had been brimming with energy just a moment ago, suddenly froze. The 4 wings on his back shattered into dust, and he fell from the sky, crashing heavily onto the ground with a loud boom. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At this time, with a burst of wind, a few figures flashed into the underground palace from the gap in the wall. Ningxi turned his head and looked, and was surprised to find that the figures that suddenly appeared were not bystanders, but Sasuke, Naruto, Seiue, and Sakura, led by Kakashi. Sasuke, whose palm was still shining with purple lightning, curled his lips at Hyde, who had fallen to the ground. Who was that idiot? Obviously, it was Sasuke, who had used the purple lightning to instantly kill Hyde. They had originally followed the marks left by Kaiban and explored all the way down, but suddenly heard Hyde shouting that he was God, so they couldn't help but give Hyde a purple lightning 1,000 birds. But they didn't expect Hyde to be so weak that he was sent flying in one move. All the demonic humans in the underground palace were shocked. They could not imagine that their leader, who was so powerful that he was almost suffocating, would be knocked down by a 13 or 14-year-old boy who suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Old Man Hien, who was still muttering "It's all over," stared dumbfoundedly at Hyde, who had fallen to the ground. For a moment, he also shut his mouth. No, it shouldn't be like this. Without a doubt, the scene of Hyde being instantly knocked down by Sasuke, who had obtained the power of the Stone of Greater Mind, was far beyond his expectation. In his mind, Hyde, who had obtained the power of the Stone of Greater Mind, should be invincible, and he shouldn't be knocked down like a dead dog on the ground. Guy asked Kakashi, "Why are you guys here?" Kakashi shrugged, then looked at the Akatsuki organization's Kakazu and said, "We can't be passive all the time. Since we found the Akatsuki organization's whereabouts this time, it's time to take the initiative to attack." After receiving the information from Guy, knowing that the Akatsuki organization's Kakazu and Haido were involved in this incident, the village immediately realized that this was an opportunity to capture the Akatsuki members and find out more about them. So they immediately sent out Kakashi's men. This was because only Kakashi, who had mastered the Flying Thunder God technique, could reach the scene in a very short time and support Kaiban to complete this capture mission. Listening to Kakashi's words, not only did Kakazu and Haido not feel nervous, but the corners of their mouths slightly curled up. Boom! At this moment, a big hole exploded on the other side of the wall, and Nagato, who was wearing the Akatsuki Red Cloud uniform, slowly walked into the underground palace. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 1224. Chong. Nagato. As the red-haired Nagato, wearing the Akatsuki Red Cloud suit, slowly walked into the underground palace, everyone on my side was shocked and panicked. Kakashi's action this time is undoubtedly a risk for the 5 great shinobi villages, because the Akatsuki organization's intention to destroy the 5 great shinobi villages is too firm, and there is no possibility of reconciliation between the two sides. Therefore, instead of passively waiting for the Akatsuki organization to launch a surprise attack every time, it's better to take the initiative and capture 1 or 2 members of the Akatsuki organization through a decisive and unexpected action. Of course, the reason why the village had decided to let Kakashi's squad carry out this risky operation was because the village had decided to let Kakashi's squad carry out this adventure. In addition to Kakashi being the only ninja in the village who can use the Flying Thunder God jutsu freely, the strength of Naruto, Sasuke, and even Satsuki are also important factors to consider. Combat experience aside, both Naruto and Sasuke had officially entered the ranks of Kage-class elites, while Seiyu in Sage Mode had immeasurable potential. Together with Kakashi, who was acting as Naruto's agent, it could be said that Kakashi's class was now the strongest class in Kimura. Originally, he thought that the only enemies he had to deal with were Kakazu and Hyuden. With Kakashi, San, and Kaiban's strength, the probability of success is very high, and once they succeed, it will be very difficult for the Akatsuki to catch up with Kakashi, San, who has mastered the Flying Thunder God technique. However, just as Kakashi's squad arrived at the battlefield, the leader of the Akatsuki, Nagato, appeared. Hyde, who had just been knocked down by Sasuke's 1,000 purple lightning birds, struggled to get up from the ground. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! At this moment, he was shocked and angry. He never thought that his body, which was as hard as steel after the mutation, would actually be unable to resist the opponent's purple lightning. And Sasuke's attack just happened to shatter the Stone of Grail inlaid on the back of his right hand. Without this Stone of Grail as a medium, The resonance between him and the mineral veins around him was immediately interrupted, and the chakra that lingered around him quickly collapsed. He fell from heaven to hell all of a sudden, which made Hyde extremely angry. However, just as he looked fearfully at Sasuke, who had knocked him down, he discovered that the ridiculously strong youth was also looking fearfully at the other side. Following Sasuke's gaze, Hyde quickly turned his head and looked over. Amidst the smoke and dust, another ninja wearing the Akatsuki red cloud suit slowly walked into the underground palace. At this time, the other aliens in the palace also gathered around the injured Hyde. In such a great change, the earth seemed to be shaking. Like an earthquake, the underground palace was even more fragmented. The stone pillars collapsed one after another, and the brick walls peeled off in pieces. And the first to bear the brunt was naturally Sasuke's Susanoo. The almost complete Susanoo was suddenly submerged by the sea of trees, and then was entangled by countless thick branches and fell to the ground, unable to move. Sasuke, seeing that Sasuke and Susanoo were submerged by the sea of trees, Naruto, in the Nine-Tails chakra mode, exclaimed, and then his figure flashed and rushed forward. Satsuki, who had entered the Sage mode, followed closely behind and followed Naruto. At this time, Naruto did not use the multiple shadow doppelganger technique, but used the Nine-Tails chakra mode chakra arms to stretch out 8 chakra arms at once, and 2 of them helped each other, condensing for Rasengan along the way to clear the trees, trying to rescue Sasuke, who was trapped by the sea of trees. Satsuki also used the hidden shadow snake hand to help Naruto clear the surrounding trees. With the cooperation of the two, they quickly cleared the trees all the way, and they were about to get close to Sasuke, who was trapped by the sea of trees. Swoosh, 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 but at this moment, a golden chain with a glowing halo whistled through the layers of the sea of trees, accurately locking Naruto and Satsuki. Third update. Please recommend votes, monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who tipped today. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 1225. This Naruto, who was entangled in the golden chain, was taken aback. He recognized that this was the ninjutsu that his mother had used to help him subdue the Nine Tails in the space of consciousness. He knew that this ninjutsu was powerful, so he subconsciously tried to break these chains. However, the more he struggled, the tighter these golden chains became. He could smash a wall and tear down a building with a light touch in the Nine Tails chakra mode, but under the restraint of the golden chain, he couldn't exert it at all, and the power of the tailed beast in his body seemed to be suppressed by the golden chain. Even the Nine Tails chakra mode that he had long been proficient in was faintly unable to maintain at this moment. Compared to Naruto, Sueyue's experience was not much better. The angle of these golden chains was very tricky. Not only were they all blind spots in the gaps of the sea of trees, but there was also the violent chakra of the sea of trees that interfered with the perception, so he couldn't avoid the golden chains and was tied up. Not only Naruto and Sueyue, but also Kakashi and Guy, who were also troubled by the attack of the Sea of Trees, were also entangled by the golden chains that suddenly emerged from the gaps of the Sea of Trees. Oh no! Kakashi was shocked. Unlike others, he, who was known as the Copy Ninja, recognized this powerful sealing technique of the Uzumaki clan at a glance. He knew that this was not a sealing technique for ordinary ninjas, but a sealing technique used to subdue more terrifying enemies, such as the tailed beast. At this time, Nagato, who was standing on a growing branch, revealed his figure from the sea of trees. The people who were entangled by the golden chains looked up and suddenly found that the source of the golden chains that entangled them was Nagato himself. There is no doubt that this King Kong lock was cast by Nagato. After losing the eyes of reincarnation, Nagato no longer had the outer Tao demon statue, the 6 paths of pain, and the powerful eye techniques of the eyes of reincarnation. But this did not mean that Nagato had completely lost his power. It was true that his power had been severely weakened, but his would escape, which was not inferior to the first generation, and the Maelstrom family's sealing techniques that he had painstakingly trained to deal with God's organization were still preserved. Strictly speaking, Nagato wasn't a tactical genius. In terms of actual combat, although he wasn't the weakest, he wasn't outstanding either. He couldn't be compared to tactical geniuses like Minato, Kakashi, and Itachi. In the past, his victories were almost all achieved by relying on his terrifying strength to forcefully crush his opponents. But once he encountered an opponent with strength close to his own, he would definitely be defeated. For example, Hyojin and Otsutsuki Samurai. At that time, the Uchiha clan was completely suppressed by the Senju clan, who had Hashirama. As the clan leader, Madara Uchiha was defeated several times in the hands of Hashirama. So in that era, Amaterasu should have fought with Wood Release, and according to the result of Madara's defeat, Amaterasu was undoubtedly at a disadvantage in the contest with Wood Release. The current Nagato not only completely inherited the physique of Hashirama, but he also has the Uzumaki sage body that Hashirama didn't have. His physique is close to that of Otsutsuki Azura, who inherited the Sage of the Six Paths. Therefore, his Wood Release is not weaker than Hashirama's. In the shinobi world, perhaps only Hashirama's Wood Release in Sage mode is slightly stronger than him. Therefore, the endless and crazy growth of the trees quickly suppressed Amaterasu, binding Sasuke's Susanoo to the point that he couldn't move. And with the continuous activation of the advent of the flower tree world, huge flower buds emerge from the wildly growing branches and vines. Knowing that these budding flowers are the most terrifying killer move of the advent of the flower tree world, Kakashi was shocked and shouted, "Quick! Quickly destroy those flower buds!" At this time, on my side, Kakashi, Guy, Naruto, and Satsuki were all locked by the diamond lock, while Sasuke was trapped in the sea of trees and couldn't break free for a while. The only ones who were still free were Ningxi, Xiaoli, Tian, and Sakura, who were ignored by Nagato. I'm asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. As a medical ninja, Sakura has not yet learned the strange power of Tsunade, so it is useless in this situation. So she had to rescue the old man and consciously hide in the corner. Boom! Boom, accompanied by a burst of roars. Under the cover of Tenzin's ninja tools, Xiao Li, who had opened the 8 inner gates, quickly broke into the forest and kicked a flower bud. At this moment, whether it is Sasuke who is trapped in the sea of trees, or Kakashi, Guy, Naruto, and Suyue who are sealed by the diamond seal, or the aliens who are forced into the corner, all looked at Xiaoli. "It's all up to you, Xiaoli," Naruto shouted. The leader of the aliens, Hyde, also realized that the flower buds growing in the sea of trees may contain great danger through Mai's actions. He hurriedly shouted to the blonde boy Timsy who was guarding in front of him, "Timsy, go and destroy those flowers." The blonde boy Timsy, who was still in a state of resonance with the surrounding stone of grayer mineral vein and surrounded by a huge amount of chakra, immediately waved his sword and rushed into the sea of trees. On one side is Xiaoli, who has opened the 8 inner hidden gates, and on the other side is Timsy, who is resonating with the stone of grayer mineral vein. Both of them aimed at the flower buds that are about to bloom in the sea of trees at the same time. However, standing in the middle of the sea of trees, Nagato didn't pay too much attention to these two. He just waved his hand, and the endless sea of trees attacked them. In this relatively narrow space, whether it is Xiaoli or Timsy, there is no way to deal with the endless sea of trees. Every time they destroy a tree in front of them, 10 or even more trees will immediately fill their vision. Soon, like Sasuke, they are trapped in the sea of trees. Not to mention destroying those flowers that are about to bloom, it is very difficult for them to even protect themselves. Seeing that Xiaoli's last burst of power has failed, Kakashi suddenly felt a wave of despair. The most important point of the descent of the flower tree world is that there are more flower buds in the sea of trees. Once those flower buds bloom, the flowers will release a powerful psychedelic pollen. In this closed environment, as long as the flower buds bloom, it means that the battle is over. Is this the power of a ninja? No, this is the power that only a god can have. The leader of the mutated tribe, Hyde, was also shocked at this moment. If he didn't see it with his own eyes, he couldn't imagine that there is such a powerful individual in the world. Looking at the godlike Nagato, standing quietly in the sea of trees, he even had an inexplicable sense of absurdity about his previous ambitions. He thought that as long as he found the grayer vein, he would be invincible, and the whole world would tremble in his shadow. But now he understood how ridiculous all of this was. Chapter 12:27. No one had expected things to turn out this way. Everyone was dumbfounded as they watched the rapidly growing sea of trees being repelled by an invisible force and piled up in a corner. They were slowly squeezed into the wall and into the crevice of the mountain. What was even more unbelievable was that the person who made this attack was not someone else, but Ningxi, whom they were familiar with. Crack! Sasuke, who got rid of the sea of trees, hurriedly used his new to cut the golden chain that bound Kakashi, Guy, Naruto, and Suyue, and then looked at Ningxi in surprise. At this time, Niji was surrounded by a mass of purple dragon-shaped phantasm, and the dragon-shaped phantasm was filled with a surging chakra. Its power was not inferior to the Grell mineral vein above his head. Sasuke opened his mouth, but didn't know what to say. Kakashi, like Sasuke, was full of doubts. He recognized the dragon-shaped phantom around Ningxi at a glance. It belongs to Hyojin's Ryumyaku chakra, but he didn't understand how the Ryumyaku got to Ningxi. Great Ningxi! Naruto, who was free, shouted excitedly. And Ningxi, who was panting lightly, calmed down, and then quickly shouted, "Everyone, don't be careless. The enemy has not been killed yet." Although his heart was full of questions, Kakashi also knew that dealing with the leader of the Akatsuki, Nagato, was the most important thing at the moment, so he put away his scattered thoughts and focused on the opposite side. At the other end of the hall, Nagato, who was suddenly attacked, appeared from the sea of trees after a while. With a light leap, Kuroto jumped out of the sea of trees and landed on the cracked floor tiles of the palace, then looked at Niji suspiciously and asked, "Are you from the Hyuga clan? Why can you use Shinra Tensei?" Although the Ryumyaku chakra that lingered around Niji's body was terrifying, it wasn't enough to attract Nagato's attention. What really caught Nagato's attention was that the seemingly ordinary Niji was able to use a technique similar to the Rinnegan Shinra Tensei. After losing the Rinnegan, even Kuroto couldn't use such Shinra Tensei. Sasuke, Naruto, and even Shaoli, Tian, and Sakura looked at Ningxi. They were shocked by the Ryumyaku chakra on Ningxi, but also surprised that Ningxi could use the Shinra Tensei. Feeling the gazes of his enemies and companions at the same time, Ningxi was slightly nervous. What he is most worried about now is that the Tenseigan will be exposing the secret that Hyojin Sensei is dead. Because once the Akatsuki learns that the leader of Amatsukami, Yama, is dead, the shinobi world will immediately usher in a catastrophe. Guy quickly said, "Ningxi, don't answer him." Kakashi also echoed, "Let's talk about it after we get back."